But they appointed her to a different committee.
I don't know if she's the best candidate, but it was the best reference.
To call the July 17th, 2019 meeting of the Fair.
Have your attention. We're going to get started. Madam Chairman.
All right, let's
Yeah,
use the
how about
gavel.
that? And not on you. I'd like to call the July 18th, 2019 meeting of the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission to order. I want to start with Citizens Forum, and first I want to say that we have lost a valued member of our community who was the chairman of the Planning Commission, the only other chairman prior to me, and someone that when he retired and I took over, he was immensely helpful to me, and anytime I had any questions or comments, he always had an answer for me. He was, as I said, he was 91 years old, and last time I saw him, I thought after I talked with him, I thought, I hope I am as focused and as alert and on topic as he was. And he will be greatly missed by a lot of us. And Ed worked, not only was on the Planning Commission with him for several years, many years, but he also worked with him in Oak Ridge. And I'd like for you to say a little something about Bob Hill.
Just a short reflection. I'd known Bob since 1975 when he hired me in engineering at OR&L. And then I followed him over to Y12, and we spent, most of his career. He retired a little earlier than I did from over there. But we worked together, and he was one of the most tireless workers and professionally, and one of the most ethical and upright persons I ever knew or worked with. And then he got me involved in the town. For some reason, he thought I could help the town in an architect engineer selection for this building. And then the next thing I know, Bob Leonard's asking me to be on the planning commission, and it just kind of snowballed from there. But there's nobody that worked harder or more tirelessly for not only Farragut but the whole Knoxville area or this region. He was very active in the land conservancy for foothills, and so it was bigger than just Farragut. But he always looked at this with a vision of what could happen and what could be, come to fruition. And a lot of what we see as Farragut today is directly attributable to his tireless work in trying to make it happen.
Every time I see someone on a walking trail, I think of him because he was so into the walking trails and outdoor activities for people, and so we have him to thank for. And I know personally I'll miss him, and the town of Farragut has a lot to thank him for. Does anyone else have any comments for Citizens Forum? Citizens Forum is a time when if anybody has a question or comment that's not on the agenda, they can get up and ask their question.
Yeah. I do have a couple of people that signed up. Ken Chipley.
Ken Chipley, 11602 Gatesmill Drive, Sweetbriar Subdivision. We spoke just last week to the Alderman meeting, and Sweetbriar residents recently noticed the real estate signs on our 4-acre green space there at 11501 Ivy Chase, and on the last empty build lot, which is at 11400 Glen Iris. I understand that Tom Hale and Mark Chipley have contacted the estate owner and the realtor and may have resolved this issue during the past, since we spoke last week, but we wanted to make sure everybody's well aware of the situation. We've discussed these lots and drainage detention ponds facing Heron Road on several occasions over the last 18 months with the Planning Commission. These are the lingering properties associated with the McSpadden estate. We received word last week that someone had contacted the TOF office and was seriously trying to buy the green open space for residential development. This is platted on the recorded survey drawings as dedicated 10% green space associated with Sweetbriar Units 4 and 5. And the listing also mentions the 2 unattached properties that form the retention basin facing Heron Road. It's not obvious to me how they could ever get a clear title on this property or get a building permit. However, stranger things have happened. In addition to the plats, the covenants signed by the McFaddens for Unit 5 clearly state that the non-existent Sweetbriar Subdivision Unit 5 Homeowners Association would be granted ownership and responsibility for this green space and the retention basins. Since the town has always had a requirement for a 10% green open space for all developers, I hope that the town of Farragut will continue to uphold their end of the bargain with the 213 existing houses in Sweetbriar subdivision. If that green space is ever eliminated here, you can be certain that every other future developer, or their heirs in this case, will want similar consideration. The existing Sweetbriar Homeowners Association represents all 5 units of the development. We are a voluntary homeowner association. Since the developers never established the Sweetbriar Subdivision Unit 5 Homeowners Association, the existing Sweetbriar Homeowners Association might be a viable alternative to accept ownership for the green space. And I can call a special meeting on with the members to talk about that and to vote on that. We have contacted both the law office that represents them at least 18, 19 months ago, and the real estate office, and I understand that the offer that was pending has now been withdrawn, and that may be very well Tom Hale and Mark Shipley's work doing that. So that's all I've got. I can give you a copy of this. Y'all can have a copy.
Thank you.
No, Ken said everything.
Carol.
I do have one sentence. Because it may come up to you all at some point. Carol Christofferson, 11320 Gates Mill Drive, Farragut. My one sentence is that yesterday I spoke to the real estate agent and informed him of Mark's ruling on behalf of the town of Farragut that no building permits will be issued for this property. And I then tried to get a hold of the lawyer who has taken over from Robin McNabb, who is luckily on vacation for the next 3 months, and inform them that we will be moving to get the deed. I don't want to say acquire because I don't know whether I don't know what that means, but we are now going to push to have the deed put into Sweetbriar Homeowners Association's hands, which if you had thought about this 20 years ago, we wouldn't be in this mess. But we are now going to go after it. And I hope we don't have to get a lawyer involved. But, you know, it was priced at $100,000, and I'm not sure the heirs are going to be willing to give that up easily. So thank you all for all the help that you've given us. And we are standing firmly on the ground that you will not issue any building permits for this piece of property. Thank you.
Carol, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Because you mentioned that there's 2 lots facing Heron Road, and I can only find one.
It's one. It's actually on. It's a 0.2 acre piece of property that is split between 2 properties.
Okay, well,
It's on here. It's one property, but
it's
it's
one lot,
It's
yeah.
actually situated on 2, and it's a retention basin.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is totally confusing to me.
Yeah, which
And-
I just wanted to make
yeah,
sure that.
and we're happy to
just
take
see-
that on too. I mean, we could leave them saying, no, we don't want the retention basin, but they have to get rid of it at
Well,
some
and I
point.
would love for you guys to pursue that but from our perspective, just reading the plat, it clearly states that Lot 57 is only to be used for recreational purposes and permanent open space.
Right.
So this is a recorded plat, so that's your preservation, and
Right.
certainly we abide by that. And
Well, just to show what we're up against, when you go in and look at the website that the real estate agent has, is it the right side or the left side of the plat?
I've seen it.
Yeah,
It's
has been removed.
Yeah.
That says
the language.
the
on
language
notes.
for what it is wasn't on there. So, you know,
On there, but only half of it.
yeah, so
They cut it in half, so.
that's where we are. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Carol.
Any other questions? Sorry.
That's all. That's it.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments in citizens forum that does not have to do with our agenda items? In that case, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Do you have any? Oh, wait, back up just 1 minute. There's, Mark, we have training next week for anyone who's going to the MTS. It's on the 24th at, and it's at the MTS offices on the UT campus or down in that area.
Yeah, I think I'd sent that out 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Right.
Some of you responded that you have signed up, but I think it's probably still has some openings, I would
As of
imagine.
yesterday, there's one spot remaining.
One
Is
spot.
that planning and zoning? Is that what that
Yeah,
is?
Yes,
it
it's,
is. They have a
Alderman will be in
series.
Nashville, so.
Focus on finance.
Yeah. So that would actually be a good one if
I've got it
any
on
of
the
you can
23rd.
try to make
Third.
it.
23rd, okay.
23rd.
23rd. Okay, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Mark, are there any changes?
We just had one added at the end under the utilities. We'll talk about
Approved.
that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 3, approval of the minutes for the June 20th, 2019 meeting. Any changes or corrections to that?
One correction, one typo on the last page, item 10, Mayor Williams nominated Commissioner Copeland. She's not a commission in and of herself.
No, I don't. No, I'm not.
Okay.
With the correction, I move
Very
for
good.
approval.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
I abstain. I was not here.
Item number 4, election of officers. Every year, according to our ordinance, the election of officers for the planning commission comes up. Do I have any nominations for chairman?
Nominate Rita Halliday.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Can't get out easily.
No. Vice chairman?
Nominate Ed St. Clair.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
And our third position is secretary.
I'll nominate Roseanne Cowell.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Appointment of a youth
Did I
representative.
not get to make my nomination?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Is it over?
We can, go ahead. We can go back.
I nominate John Green. I think he comes to the meetings prepared. I think he has critical insight into items being discussed. He asks good questions. He makes meaningful comments, is willing and has the time to serve, and he's always on time to meetings.
So we go back and,
we have a nomination for Roseanne and a nomination for, does
John
someone want
Green.
to second John Green?
Second.
I would have seconded, but I seconded Roseanne.
Yeah. I nominated.
okay, so, do we go down the row on this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
You
is
made a
that the
roll call.
procedure? Roll call vote.
Okay, well, let me get this organized here. Let me write it down here. Okay, Commissioner Myers.
Commissioner John Green.
Okay. Betty?
Commissioner John Green.
Commissioner Polly?
I think they'll both serve well. I'm going to do Commissioner Roseanne Kyle.
Okay, Mayor?
Since I nominated Roseanne Cowell, I'll do the same.
Roseanne Kyle.
Okay.
I think both are excellent candidates, but I'll go with Roseanne Kyle.
Pass.
No.
Roseanne Cowell.
Commissioner John Green.
Okay, well, it looks like it's Roseanne. A narrow victory for her. Get the actual preparation of the minutes. If y'all want to make that motion, I'll second that.
Make it, we could have a
She's
team,
very
like-
good, very thorough. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 5 now, appointment of youth representatives. We have a candidate who I think is with us tonight. If you'll come up to the microphone, please.
Is Melanie here?
Is Melanie here?
Cianfolo? I don't think she's
I
here.
don't think she's here.
Oh, okay.
3 candidates originally, and 2 of the 3 had been appointed to other boards since the packet went out. So Melanie is the applicant that we have, and
Okay.
I think she'll be a very good one. She had a very, very good letter
Yep.
of recommendation.
All 3 candidates were excellent.
They really were. So I think
I'm going to move to appoint Melanie Cianfolo to the youth representative for the Planning Commission.
All those in favor? Aye. Mark, you have talked with them, and she realizes the timing of the
we'll meet
meetings?
with her. Yeah, we'll schedule a meeting. The staff will meet with her, and just similar to what we did with Scott a
Okay.
few days ago,
Okay.
go through how we operate and what she can expect and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
And before we move on to item number 6, Mayor, we have a new member to the Planning Commission. Would you like to introduce him, please?
Yeah, Scott Russ is our new member. He's down on the end. Scott is also on our Parks and Rec committee, and if he'd like to say a few words, go right ahead.
Well, thank you, and I'm honored to be a part of this commission. I've worked with the town for not even quite a year yet, but this is really quite an honor, and I hope to do my best to give my input as a concerned citizen and look out on behalf of my neighbors in this community. Thank you.
Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Scott, for serving.
We'll move on to item number 6, discussion and public hearing on site plan for the small cell support structure at 11473 Parkside Drive, Mastech AT&T Mobility applicant.
This application was before you all last month. It actually involved 2 small cell support structures in the Parkside Drive, Heron Road area. And since the meeting, the application, as you may recall, was denied because it was incomplete. And that was conveyed to the applicant, and they have provided supplemental information for the Parkside Drive location, and this is roughly near the eastern access into the Best Buy shopping center on Parkside Drive. That's approximately where this is located. It's got a rendering up on the screen there of what the pole looks like right now. It's a light pole, and they will be taking that down and replacing it, similar to what Zayo did a couple of years ago with some poles in Parkside Drive and Campbell Station, or Campbell Lakes Drive, and putting their small cell structure and antenna about a third of the way down. You can see it on the right. The reason it has to protrude away from the pole is because the light is at the top. The original design for their freestanding pole that was going to be separate from our light pole was a more stealth structure that was at the top of the pole, and it kind of was a cylinder. It blended in. It looked like just a pole without anything on it. But we recommended that they consolidate the poles out there because, what they had proposed was just a few feet east of this light pole, and it would have had 2 large poles pretty close together. And the staff felt like it was more visually appealing to have maybe an antenna that protrudes out, but you only have 1 pole as opposed to two poles in the general area. The applicant is revisiting the Heron Road location, and they have not made any decisions on that, and that will not be part of this request this evening. If they do present something in the future, it will come back before you all. So the staff does recommend approval of this small cell support structure at approximately 11473 Parkside Drive, subject to the 7 comments that were at your places, and those have been sent to the applicant.
Have they agreed to these?
They have not expressed any concerns with the comments. I
Okay.
haven't heard that they had any problems with these.
Has the staff reviewed the application for compliance to be a complete application?
Yeah, and as far as what's required under state law, it would be complete. I only included a small portion of the application in your packet because it's got they have a lot of structural information, which is good. We need that. But yes, it looked to be complete.
Motion to approve a site plan for a small cell support structure at 11473 Parkside Drive, subject to the 7 items as listed.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
They mentioned in, I guess, communication back to you about the Heron Road. Any more insight into what they're going to do there, or when they're going to?
I haven't heard anything definitive yet. They possibly will, if they have something, it could be out at Parkside Drive, kind of like we had originally
That would be nice.
recommended and asked them to consider, but until we see it, I don't really know for sure.
Okay.
And you don't have any kind of date that
No, we haven't had anything that, other than what I'd sent in that email, is all that I've received on that particular location.
so anyone who's interested in that can keep a watch on the Farragut website to get when that might come back again. Item number 8, discussion and public hearing on amendment to the C-1 mixed-use town center portion of the Farragut zoning ordinance as applied to drive-throughs and, oh, I'm sorry.
Skip some.
Yeah, I skipped one here.
Yeah.
I marked it off in a hurry. Discussion and public hearing on a site plan for the drive-through lane and building exterior modification at the ORNL Federal Credit Union, 11405 Municipal Center Drive, 1 acre zone C-1, MUTC Design Collaborate applicant.
And I'll let the applicant go through their, what they're requesting, but just to give you a little bit of an overview, as you maybe have noticed some of this in the area, but ORNL's updating their branches in the Knoxville region to reflect their new prototype, and this involves some exterior modifications, and that's what's being presented to you all this evening. They also will have a lot of interior modifications that our codes guys will be reviewing. This property is within the mixed-use town center land use, and so we do have the masonry requirement there, as well as the provisions related to drive-throughs. Now, the facility has a pretty substantial existing drive-through area on the north side of the building. It's pretty discreet at least from public streets. And what they're proposing to do is to demolish that and create, and I can go back to some other slides here, but if you look at the right side, there's like 3 individual ATM teller kiosks that they're proposing. As I mentioned earlier, in the mixed-use town center, drive-throughs are an element that we are not really trying to broadcast in this area. It's more of a pedestrian-oriented land use area. So the one suggestion or recommendation the staff had, at least on the drive-through ATM, was to use earth tones in that general area, something that would not be real bright and basically call attention to the drive-through area, because we actually want to lessen or de-emphasize the drive-through element rather than broadcast it. So that's one recommendation. And the other, as I understand it from the applicant's architects, they're not really changing the masonry percentage. It might be a very minor change from what's existing. The existing building obviously predates our architectural design standards. They're doing some, repainting, and they are adding some elements that are trying to bring more of an earthy kind of look, a little wood panel section, and mostly kind of muted colors. The blue is a little pretty bright, but it does appear to be, one of our adopted colors that you all adopted a couple of years ago as part of the architectural design standards for
that bright?
building accents. It's pretty bright, yeah.
Is it that bright on their palette?
Well, it's, it looks like it's that color, I think it was, trying to remember, I put it in the packet.
49,
Yeah.
45, 93,
93.
Mark, is this color objection to the bright color that you've discussed, is that preference or is that ordinance?
Well, we do have the adopted color scheme, and he's going to, is this what the colors?
Seems to me kind of overly restrictive to the designer and to the builder. It looks to me
Well, keep
attractive.
in mind, this is in the mixed-use town center, so, we're not, especially in the drive-through area, we're not trying to call attention
I think
to
it's
that.
important to note that these drive-throughs are actually behind the building.
Yes,
They're
they
not
are.
visible at all from Municipal Drive. They're visible from
Right.
that little, whatever that street is
They're-
that goes behind there.
Right. They're
But
not,
It's really not obtrusive at all
Yeah.
from my.
well, that's your all's decision. That's just,
Well, I
That's
think
just the
obviously
staff's
the
recommendation on
applicant's
that.
probably trying to draw attention to it to a certain extent to the customers,
Yeah, I feel like we're being overly restrictive when we don't need to be. We're trying to encourage business, and this feels like an unnecessary restriction to me.
Restriction is on just the drive-through, though.
yeah.
Yeah, right. And again, you really can't see it from anywhere unless you turn in, because there is shrubbery that blocks it from
Yeah, it's
out front
pretty-
here.
It is hidden
That
fairly
is
well
gonna
from
be-
public
Yeah, oh, yeah.
streets.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is good.
That's surely a more muted color than what the picture is.
Yeah, that
When you hold it up.
doesn't surprise me.
It's
Is
darker.
that
Noah, do you have any comments on it?
here, maybe?
I think they have earned the right through grandfathering to continue the use of the drive-throughs.
Yeah.
The blue, both reflected on the drive-throughs as well as kind of an anchor point where their signage is proposed. I have a real heartburn over, due to the fact that this is our MUTC. This is not something that we're approving on Outlet Drive or out on Kingston Pike and West Farragut. This was an area that we designated a number of years ago to try to set a tone, and we've held some other folks' feet to the fire within the MUTC that has to do with colors, both on some renovations over at West End Avenue as well as the new Starbucks. And quite frankly, we're personally, I think with this particular building, we're going a little bit in the wrong direction. It does have some red brick. It is a dated building, and I understand that they want to update it. And I also understand that they have a corporate identity, and I was actually up in Oak Ridge on Tuesday and looked at their kind of corporate facility as well as the branch next to their corporate facility, and it is part of their corporate identity, and I respect that. However, I do think that the bright blue is not in keeping with what, at least what I had envisioned in some of the things that we've worked on over the years within the mixed-use town center district.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar, if you remember the car wash that we had 3 or 4 years ago, and that's kind of what precipitated the adoption of the color palette. And they worked with us to get those vacuums to not be blue like they are in Alcoa and other places.
Frankly,
To
the car
make
wash
them,
is not even in the MUTC. That was just C1.
and I know, that's right.
And so that we
That's
held
right.
somebody's feet to the fire outside of the
Yes.
MUTC. This is the core. This is what
That's
we
right.
hope will be the identity and the nucleus of a downtown Farragut.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with my colleague to the right here, that we still have that big blue wall with the O&L symbol on it. And I think to accentuate more blue is overkill. I think everybody will know, they don't need to really identify the drive-in. Everybody will know where the drive-throughs are and proceed to it. And then being in the town center district, I think we're being more than lenient to grandfather the big blue wall.
I have to agree with Ed. And
Sorry, Mayor.
I said I'll have to agree with both of you on that.
So let me ask you this, just for clarity. Are you proposing that this blue is okay here, but not on the drive-through?
I'm proposing that the blue that they use within their corporate identity on their other new prototype buildings, whether they're renovated or new, that I have personally been exposed to, is not acceptable in the MUTC.
Okay.
Where did these go?
I mean, the applicant,
Well, no, she wants to know where I
where
think.
The wood.
When you look at that, I think that's the wood right
Where's it
there.
applied?
do you want to
Look,
present
yes,
that?
and
Where-
on the
yeah.
awning.
Why don't you come up and talk
There.
through that?
I think it's this piece right here.
It's easy to see where this goes.
My name's Daniel Byer. I'm with Design Collaborative, the architecture and engineering firm. So
Your address, sir?
my address,
Yes.
it's not local.
It's okay, just your business address, just for the
Okay.
record.
200 East Main Street, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Suite 600.
Thank you.
So, as you can see, it's kind of hard to see on this screen, but maybe on your screen it's easier. The wood look panel will be just a portion of the south elevation, very small portion of the east elevation, and then part of the canopies on the others. The blue, like you had all seen, will be used at the wall on the north elevation, and then the columns of the drive-through canopies.
North elevation faces Kingston Pike.
What do you
And-
propose to do with the existing brick that's on the building now? Are you going to paint it? Is that the plan?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay, and that's going to be kind of the gray, part, that gray color?
Right.
Okay.
We do have some examples of finished projects. If you wouldn't mind flipping to that. And they're actually photos of what.
Would it help if I turned the light off?
It might also help the audience, too.
No, if that, it's hard for me to see that. Yeah, that's a lot better. Yeah.
See more of that.
It's a very bright blue. I mean, it really is.
Mark, do we have a blue in our architectural design that's a more muted blue than that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we have other choices, yes.
Are you aware of the colors that we do have in our architectural design?
Yes, and through discussions with I think it was Mark and a colleague of mine, this is what ORNL Federal Credit Union has used. This is pretty much their corporate color, and it's very similar to one of the blues that's within the list of colors. So that's really why we're seeking to present this in front of you and have approval for using this color here.
In person, it to me it appears like a neon blue. It is a very bright blue, and I'm not saying it's not a good-looking blue. My feeling is that it's not appropriate in the MUTC.
Okay.
Try this again.
I'm going to say, I struggle with, and you guys know I do, I struggle with our architectural design guidelines, and I've approved them all along, so yes, I voted for these, but I struggle with, this is a trademark color for them. This is part of their whole, I understand what we're trying to accomplish in the mixed-use town center. But this also brings, it differentiates the building a little bit. I just really struggle when we have a business who brings in a trademark color that they're using, and it's something that is meant to be, okay, that's a ORNL building. So if you have a customer that happens to work in Oak Ridge and they're out there, they know that, and then they come here and they see that. And so we're asking them to compromise that, and that, I from a business point of view, I just really struggle with that.
I agree with your comments.
You know, I struggle kind of with the converse
feel
because
like-
that, it sets us up. It sets us up for a precedence to take that kind of approach because somebody could come in with bright pink or some other color that's in our palette and say that's our corporate identity.
I
think of
understand.
Nukes.
So I
Think
it's
of
a lot
Nukes
easier to
years
try and
ago.
help them marry to what we want
I
than
understand.
for us to accept any color that comes into the town.
To me, the big blue is an attention-getting device, which is what we've tried to deal with under our signage ordinance for many years, and that's something we've really tried to de-emphasize.
We have a responsible corporate enterprise here that's settling in as a part of their business in Farragut, and I think it's part of our duty to support that. And if this is their corporate color for their banks that they're using all over, then I'm willing to make an exception to use those colors both on the front and in the drive-throughs. For example, the drive-throughs are nothing compared to the blue on the front, so I'd be willing to accept it as is.
What are we going to tell 3 Minute Car Wash why they wanted their blue and we wouldn't give them their blue?
Because they're
Say,
not,
we
a
just
because
change
they're
our
not,
mind tonight? It's
On a slippery slope when we start
too.
just making exceptions and
Right.
another exception and another exception.
Well, may I say this? I think, how many exceptions are you going to make for existing businesses that predate the code palette, the color palette that was
Yeah.
in existence? I think the exceptions would come into play if it were new businesses that didn't already exist within the town.
This is a major renovation, so it's essentially like
I agree. It's a
rebuilding.
major renovation.
Well,
And it is in the town center.
if we're not going to comply with our current amount of masonry, and we're going to grandfather, I think we need to grandfather what they've got, as opposed to changing to something that we would not give anyone else. I can't see us doing that.
I mean, quite frankly, our renovations that we've dealt with in the past have been, we've had applicants that have been willing to bring their buildings more into compliance, even though they may not be 100% in compliance. But the reality was the after was better than the before. And quite frankly, here, I can't say that. I think the after is worse than the before.
Yeah, sure.
It's not personal against your architecture either. This has something to do with the MUTC and philosophically where I've been with the architectural design standards for many years.
I'm Lynn Holt, with Assistant Vice President over Facilities for ORNL, 414 Sherwood Estates Circle, Clinton, Tennessee.
State your name again.
Lynn Holt.
Lynn Holt?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
I'd just like to say a little bit about community involvement and how we like to support the community, just to kind of help with this situation. We do participate in a lot of community events, like, let's see, we are a member of the Chamber of Commerce, both here at Farragut location and our Kroger Farragut location. We participate in the Farragut community events like Dogwood Arts, which is Farragut participates in that, American Heart Association, United Way, Boys and Girls Club. This includes the Knoxville Open, which is held in Farragut. I mean, we are a business that puts into the community and try to reach out to people and help as we can. We have over 5,797 members at this location. And so what our idea is try to keep our brand in order to let people know that this is ORNL. So as far as loans and deposits, we have over $100,437 or $1,000 in loans. Our total shares are $117,549,669. At the Farragut Kroger location, our loans go from $9,544,803. Our shares are $29,528,096. Funds under management over here at this location here is $117,549,669. Our funds under management at our Farragut location, Farragut Kroger's location, is $257,060,328. And we do this at all of our locations, and I'm just asking that maybe we can do it here. I mean, we take care of our buildings, and we just like to give back to our members, and that's how we do it, is repurpose buildings and make them look good.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Do you want me to do a roll call based on what they're
I
requesting?
think this is discussion.
You have to have a motion, so.
I mean, once you get
I
to
don't-
that point. I don't know why that light keeps coming back on. There's a good-
This is a discussion, public hearing, isn't it?
So we've got to vote.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So,
Well, I mean, you could postpone it. I mean, it's up to you all, but it's advertised is for you to vote on it.
any more questions or
I
comments?
guess I'm just trying to work through, I get our mixed-use town center and what we're trying to accomplish. We have these existing buildings, and that's how, that's not going to change. You know, DeVita's where it is, and this is where it is, and they are upgrading it. I'm not a fan of the blue on the drive-throughs. I would love to see that part of it made the darker gray or the whatever, you know, dull that down. But I think this is a smaller aspect of the building. It's not like you have an entire huge blue wall. When the car wash came in, their original colors were that bright yellow and the blue. And they left the blue and then they brought in, is it gray now, I think? Which was a much better decision, I thought. And I like the blue. I don't have a problem with, because it's not the entire side of a wall, and I don't know if if some of us on the board are interested in a variance for the minimal amount that it is. I don't know. I'm inclined to allow them to have this wall of blue and not have the blue on the drive-through area, which I don't think is much of an issue anyway.
Yeah,
because it's
I
behind
think
the
we would
building.
be fine with that.
Pretty much our standard with existing renovations like this historically has been the action they were taking at that time brought the building clearly more into compliance with the design standards, not further away. Now, you could argue that the drive-through is physically much more substantial than what they're proposing because they're going to demolish most of that
Yeah.
drive-through. Now, obviously, the staff has serious concerns about the colors in that drive-through because it really broadcasts that area, I think. But that aspect of their project is bringing it more into compliance, but the colors are taking it more out of compliance. So it's kind of it's a little different than the ones that we've looked at so far, like the West End Center, for example, where that was pretty clear that they were bringing it much
More
greater
into-
into compliance.
Is, the pictures that we have up now, some of these buildings have more than one blue wall. Will the one here have more than one blue area, just the one blue
No,
area?
the intention is only one at this location.
If I can turn this back off again.
And they have signage, and their signage is blue. And certainly, we're going to give them deference on their signage, are we not? To have it the color that is the color they want it to be?
Well, I think it needs to be part of this discussion because you all are administering the architectural design standards.
I have a question here to make sure I understand. I'm looking at the depiction here, the picture. That blue wall looks like it does not face Municipal Drive there.
It faces DeVita.
It faces the dialysis
Faces
building.
east.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Right, so
fa-
that,
yeah, faces-
even though it's a dominant color, it really does not face the main road there. And that main road that building is shielded from the main road by a row of trees. So that really would not be very predominant if you're coming down the Municipal Drive there. So I think that's another factor that we might want to think about, consider.
don't you put up the elevation that does face Municipal Center, Mark?
By the way, the dialysis building has bright blue awnings.
That's grandfathered in. It was well before we ever had an
Next door.
MUTC or the architectural design standards.
Yeah, I think this right elevation
The one on the
shows-
right, yeah,
Yeah.
that facing area
Yeah,
is
that
facing
south face.
Municipal Center Drive.
Yep.
This is something that this planning commission has struggled with, and I understand philosophically where everybody's coming from. If we have a problem with our architectural design standards, I think we should change it for everybody. There's a lot of things that, and colors has been a big issue, and we can probably go back and think of some projects over the years of the reason why we have the kind of the color wheel that we deal with today. And my thought is we've got to be consistent going forward. I mean, this is a reputational thing that the town has struggled with for many years, is treating one developer or one applicant one way and another way. If we're going to have rules, they need to be fair and consistent for everybody.
When this conversation started, Mark, I think I heard you say that the opposition was to the blue on the drive-through because we did not want to accentuate drive-throughs. Now we're talking about the blue, period.
Discussion.
I was talking about
making
all
a-
the blue from the very
Yeah.
beginning.
Well, that's our
Not just the
prerogative to
drive-throughs.
discuss it.
Yes.
That's fine. I mean, I just was giving you the staff's position because I think certainly drive-throughs should be de-emphasized in this part of the town.
Yep. And I
so
can agree with, I
That's where
certainly
I was
agree with
coming
that.
from there. The blue is pretty bright. I've seen it on actual sites. I did go out and look at a couple, and it's a bright blue. It's kind of a glossy blue.
And I'm fine with the blue within their signage allowance. I mean, they have some blue on their sign now. They updated their sign a number of years ago. And within the allocation that they have within their signage allowance, I'm fine with that. To me, the whole blue block on the corner of this building is a sign, which is not within the allowance that they would have for the number of square feet for a sign. It's out of character, and it's definitely out of place for the MUTC.
I agree with Noah. If we just can't make exceptions, and like Ed said, the next person that comes in, and we have to uphold our ordinance.
Well, maybe as a compromise, if you could box in the allocated sign area, I mean, you might get, a fair amount of that square area that would be blue background, and it would be part of your sign.
Would they be eligible for the length of the building just on Municipal Center, but also the length of the building that faces the
No, they would
unnamed
just
driveway,
be-
where they could
no.
take,
They
they
would
get at
just
least the
be-
benefit of all the square footage?
Well, it would be based on the
Just
side
Municipal
of the
Center?
building width on which the sign is to be mounted. Plus, they could do the ground-mounted sign like they have.
I mean, I think there's some ways architecturally that they could take that blue and create something where they define a picture frame within that box and then run their blue within that box.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not going to be exactly what you guys are used to in your corporate identity, but what we're really hoping here is that we can come up with a compromise that your board, your members, as well as the architect and the other folks that are in charge, are happy with, as well as something that's reasonably consistent with our architectural design standards, the MUTC, and also how we've treated applicants in the past, and hopefully we're going to treat them the same in the future.
And we certainly, appreciate all your corporate comments that you made too. And under full disclosure, I've been a member since 1975, so it's I certainly understand the Orno credit.
Well, I personally don't like the blue color in the location, the mixed town center. But because it is a corporate identity, I'm willing to concede, in addition to it being a current building, it's already there. It's not a new business coming in. But I would like to see the blue taken away from the drive-throughs, and your consideration of a smaller something instead of that big monstrosity blue, still keeping your blue somewhere, but minimize it as much as you can and still keep within your corporate standards.
Yeah, I think if you look at your symbol and your signage and have the blue background, you still get the same message across, and it's kind of a.
Maybe it just
I think a
doesn't have to be
win-win
as
for both
big.
of us.
is
I
what
think
I'm
you can do
thinking.
that with Noah's approach.
I think
I really
so.
do.
I do too. Believe that.
I like the idea of reducing the amount of blue and framing the sign, because I agree with Noah, that blue is a sign. It's almost a billboard, and I don't like billboards.
So as mentioned before, with the pictures of the other locations that had multiple blue walls, we've really kind of considered this location and some of your concerns beforehand and reduce that quite a bit by having one wall and not nearly as large as other locations. I think this is something that they'd like to maintain to retain their corporate identity, but I think that reducing the blue with the drive-through is something that can be done.
Am I understanding you to say that you've already reduced the size of that on the wall?
In comparison to other locations, as you saw in the pictures of already completed renovations.
Do that, Mark, if you can. Oh, yeah, it is. It is. It's smaller.
I'm not sure how comparisons to other locations bring any bearing on our particular discussion.
I have to agree with that, Noah.
I do too.
If we can't come to consensus, I think we probably should postpone this until we can look at this a little bit closer and think of how a sign type thing would work at this location.
I might offer a compromise if the board as well as the staff would be comfortable with it. If it's possible that we could approve tonight, subject to working with staff and keeping your blue within your signage square footage allowance. And that way, if all of a sudden you guys are trying to finish your plans and hopefully submit a building permit or for a building permit, then what we don't want to do is we don't want to unnecessarily slow you down. So if you felt like that was a possibility, then I think that is something, at least myself, and as long as the staff would feel comfortable with keeping your blue within your signage allowance, you could still do your blue background and then do kind of your silver letters. I get the kind of those laser CNC letters that you guys do on the front. You could still do that. And that's a way we could get you approved tonight. I think I've not polled the rest of the commission here, but otherwise I cannot support it as presented.
Yeah. I would encourage what you say, Ron.
I guess my only concern from that is if that's not something that everybody on the corporate side is on board with, then do we have an issue with
No, you could resubmit.
moving forward? Okay.
You could all of a sudden, if your board says absolutely not, we want you to go back and fight for it, which I respect you for, you could still resubmit. At least I'm giving you a path that wouldn't slow you down unnecessarily. I mean, obviously you got to do some revision on this blue block and maybe the drive-throughs as well, but otherwise it might help keep your project on track. I don't think you're going to lose any time doing it the way that we're talking about it, and the staff's not going to charge you another application fee to reapply whatever revision you want to. And quite frankly, you could say, this is what we're going to stick to, and we want you to take a vote for it. The challenge is, if you get a no vote, there may be a waiting period before you got to wait before you could come back and resubmit. So those are some consideration. I'm just trying to throw an alternative out there. It's completely up to you guys. If y'all want to table it, or maybe we could keep it on the agenda and put it on next month's, and maybe through a staff developer meeting, see if there's some middle ground. Or we could possibly get you approved tonight, kind of within the constraints that I've spoken about.
So I'll need to take us back to the CEO and all that to explain it to him. But in order for us to move forward as far as the interior and the drive-through, could we go ahead and move forward on that and then work with y'all on whatever we do to the blue?
Well, the staff, there may be some challenges within the permitting department, and there's some guys, the codes officials. They may say, hey, we need to look at the whole project, being that you're not really tweaking the footprint of your building. It doesn't appear you're tweaking the footprint of your building. You're within the same footprint of your building. The staff may be more comfortable with maybe giving you an interior permit. I don't know if we have any building codes, Mark's in charge of that particular department, but the guys that actually get down in the weeds and review those drawings, I don't think are here tonight.
Yeah, we could work with them on the interior.
Okay.
I mean,
That way you could get started on that.
Yeah,
And if you
that's
wanted
fine.
a demolition permit for the canopy over the drive-through, generally I like the direction you're going. I wish it was 1 or 2 drive-throughs instead of 3, but I understand obviously you guys have projected that there's going to be a need for 3 drive-throughs, and I'm not going to get into to that. You have 3 now, or almost kind of 4 really, the way it's set up. And so, but I think we could work with you guys to kind of keep you rolling on this. I think generally you kind of see the flavor of where we're coming from with this blue. I mean, it's created a lot of heartburn with me, and maybe to a lesser extent some heartburn with some other folks as well.
The drive blues are going to be smaller than the ones that are there now.
Drive-through.
Yes, it'll be smaller, but it'll be more spread out, so cars can get through. It'll be wider lanes instead.
That's good design. I have to agree with you. It's good design.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
I think at some point, how long have we had our design guidelines in place?
They were adopted in the spring of 2015.
Okay. I think at some point, I would love for us to I know what I'm about to suggest, Mark, is like, really, we can get to that in 2022. We might need to assess how we're applying them, and because I have to be honest with you, this is not the first time I have struggled through this. When we went through the second building that on where Anytime Fitness is, I thought what we stuck so close to our design guidelines that we're going to make that development look incongruent. But that's another conversation, but it belongs part of this conversation where we have corporations coming in who are good partners to our community, and they have colors that, quite frankly, Anytime Fitness is purple. So, hey, I get it. It's important. Your corporate colors are important. They're an important part of your identity, and I have a very difficult time asking corporations, companies that come in to say, you know what, we need you to mute that here. It's going to look the same on every other building, but we need you to mute it here. And I think that we've got to find a happy medium where we're honoring that businesses are coming in and spending money to renovate their buildings or build buildings and honor that. So I think we need a bigger discussion about this at some point. So that's all I got to say on that.
Thank you.
So,
I want to
Do
make
we have a motion,
as
or
to
are we
what you want to
through?
do.
One more time from the applicant about what your instinct is saying, how you'd like to move forward.
I guess the biggest concern about the proposal to have just it as a sign and then reapplying later is the chance of it happening is less the next time around. And I don't think that the executive team or the board is really up for that. That, as you can see, over many hours and much investment in other places and within their branch design, this is what they want for their branches. So it's really up to them. I can't decide for them if it can be
Do you want to
a
postpone a
sign.
month, maybe, or I don't,
Keys, do you want to postpone
the decision
to go
on
back and
the,
talk to them, or do you want something to kind of get you further down the road and the idea that it would be
You also have the right to
acceptable?
ask for a vote as well.
So
Either way,
your preference would be would that be to postpone the exterior so you can move on with the interior and or the drive-through and interior, but postpone the rest of the exterior, or just the blue wall, or
Just the blue wall, if we could just postpone that, I guess, if that'll work. Just postpone that.
Will that work for you, Mark?
or does it
we
have
can
to
make
be
a
more?
motion that covers
Yeah.
everything we
Yeah, we
want,
can
and
do
then
that.
you all could come back
I
and
think we
say
can do
that
that.
part's not acceptable. or something and come back to us.
I mean, my original proposal was to try to make something simple enough that you could leave it up to staff. What you're saying is that's probably not going to be sufficient or satisfactory for your executive crew. So, so what you're thinking is maybe try to get a vote and an approval to do your inside work and just basically leave your exterior other than some of the modifications to the drive-through. Is that kind of what you're thinking tonight? Make you at least that. Obviously, this is not granting you a building permit. This is making you eligible to submit your construction drawings for a building permit.
Exactly. So when I take this back to the CEO, I'm not sure what he's gonna forecast for the future.
Okay.
It could be that he'll say, no, we're not gonna move forward at all. But if he wants to move forward with the interior and the drive-through, what I'd like to do is go ahead and see if I can go ahead and do that, if that's what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then move forward and then resubmit something for the blue wall after that.
Quite frankly, you could move forward with the interior as long as you're not modifying the footprint of the building without approval tonight. Now, you'd still need to submit your construction drawings through and get codes review and all that. But I guess I'm just trying to throw another option so you realize what your options are.
Yeah.
If you start changing the footprint of the building, that's getting into a site plan, a civil engineering design thing, and that's where you do need approval from this body.
Okay. Understood.
But
So-
you are interested in interior as well as drive-through.
Yes.
Correct.
Is the footprint of the building going to be changed?
No, it's
Okay.
not.
Well, other than the canopy, the
Other
removal
than
of the canopy.
being removed, yeah.
So, I mean, it is technically a change, even though it's maybe a good change. The reality is that is the part of the site plan that triggers a need for some sort of approval from this body for you to be able to get a permit from the codes department. Mark, chime in if I'm misreading anything. I've just been in their shoes, and I kind of
Yeah, I mean, we'll do what we can to work with them on the work that they can do, independent of this color issue. I mean, I don't know why we couldn't, go ahead and issue the interior work whenever assuming it's ready to be issued, and then they could come back and let us know what they want to do with the blue, I suppose, and we could issue the demolition for the drive-through, and they could be working on that aspect of it as well.
So how do we proceed from here, from our standpoint? Do we need to make any kind of motion?
Well, for the demolition of the drive-through, we probably do. I think I can attempt to craft a motion,
That's
Madam
fine.
Chairman, if you're all right with that.
Yes.
So I think,
Please.
as a formality, we probably do need. There has to be some. It is an action item tonight, so we have to do something with it. So I'm going to attempt to do this. Let me pull out my subject twos here. Okay, I'm going to make a motion to approve the site plan for the drive-through lane and the building exterior modifications at the ORNL Federal Credit Union at 11405 Municipal Center Drive, subject to the two items that are still outstanding, as well as removal of the blue, both with the drive-through and the big block thing on the front of the building. And I think that covers what our intention is. That would actually give you a little bit more eligibility as far as a building permit goes. You could actually start doing some things, assuming you submit your construction drawings with the exterior. But that's going to cover your exterior, interior, as well as make you eligible for your demolition on your canopy. And you could go ahead and do your drive-throughs, just not in the blue. I mean, in a gray or a black, one of the other colors is complementary with your building.
I'm sure that would be
Is it
fine.
your intent in your motion to have look at that as a signage? Or you just
I'm not sure
want to
I
say
have.
remove
I'm
it
not
and
sure I
make-
have the authority.
You want to
as
maybe
a-
remove it and then have them come back?
No, my thought is I'm not sure I have a authority as a commissioner to say, hey, that's a sign. But what I do have some authority as one person on this body is to say that particular aspect of the building is not within compliance of architectural design standards, specifically within the MUTC. So I'm not trying to kick you back. I'm not trying to kick you to the VRB as a sign. My interpretation is it is a sign, but I'm going to leave that up to somebody a lot smarter than I am.
Okay. I know we worked through Neon Sign Company, and they did pull a permit for signage.
Okay.
And they said we couldn't put the one on the backside that we wanted to originally, but that one was approved.
Okay. Well, keep in mind that I'm not sure exactly what was approved through the VRB. What I suspect was probably your CNC, those stainless steel letters, your offset
that's
letters,
what I thought.
which I think, by the way, are real tasteful. I love that's kind of a new way. I'm glad you guys are embracing that type of lettering.
So The motion was to approve the site plan as submitted, subject to the removal of, well, the staff's 2 comments and then the removal of the blue block at this time, as shown on the.
And also the removal of the blue on the drive-through. Not the removal of the drive-through. I'm fine with the drive-through.
Well,
but-
that was one of the staff's comments.
Okay, so you still had that, yeah, that's true, you
Number
still had
2.
that as a comment. Okay.
Second.
Okay, and a second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, you want me to do a roll call on that, or
Yeah, go ahead.
Can't you like that?
I planned on that?
Myers is aye.
Hey, Dick? Betty? Aye. Poblin? No. Mayor?
Yes.
Yes.
Holiday? Yes. St. Clair?
Aye.
Kyle?
Aye.
And Russ?
Aye.
Okay.
I think we want to make it clear, though, that you could look at how the sign concept would work in with the blue and the lettering, even it might be shrunk down to be half that or something like that. We're not saying eliminate all the blue.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Now we can do number 8.
No, you can take those. You appreciate that.
Number 8, discussion and public hearing on amendment to the C-1 mixed-use town center portion of the Farragut zoning ordinance as applied to drive-throughs through menu boards on existing developments with drive-throughs that predate the mixed-use town center land use designation. McDonald's USA LLC applicant.
Well, we talked about this item last month as a workshop, and as you know, that McDonald's is getting ready to renovate their building on Kingston Pike, both internal and external renovations. And when they went back to the corporate, they wanted to ask for purposes really of improving traffic flow within the rather confined site. It's a pretty small site, and it's much fuller developed than what we would allow under a completely new development. So everything's really close together in there. And the thought process was to split the drive-through ordering point into 2 sections to, again, reduce that stacking, because nowadays, a vast majority of their customers use the drive-through rather than come into the building, and it was kind of the opposite when the building was built back in 1985. So they're trying to address that and really improve the safety of the flow internally on the site. But in order to do those things, they had to request a text amendment because this is in the town center area as well. It's obviously an existing restaurant with a drive-through. So what we talked about last month was to make some changes to the C1 mixed-use town center to give the planning commission some opportunity to allow some flexibility for these existing restaurants that have drive-throughs, where an applicant could demonstrate certain improvements as a result of what they were proposing as far as safety and just general traffic flow. The staff put together a draft last month, and that was favorably received. There was one topic that came up with the applicant about signage, as you may recall, and we added that in to Ordinance 19-23 to address what we talked about with the menu board signage in this particular situation and the size that the applicant had requested. So the staff recommends approval of Ordinance 19-23 through Resolution PC-19-07. And if you all have any comments, I'll be happy to try to answer those.
I'd like to applaud McDonald's corporate as well as their local franchisee for taking some recommendations from this body and really exhibiting a willingness to cooperate as well as compromise on some really tough things that we've dealt with. They've added some areas to kind of mitigate some of the landscape beds that are being removed. They've added some landscape beds, and they've really done a lot of things. We've been looking at this site plan for, I think, maybe since November or December of last year, and I want to thank McDonald's. I don't know if any of the representatives are here, but we do appreciate your willingness to try to understand having an older building and trying to bring it more into compliance, and we look forward to your continued success in the town, and I look forward to getting my unsweet iced tea every morning. So.
I just need some
McDonald's
help
or the franchisee
understanding a
happen to be
little
here?
bit of this language.
Okay.
Don't see who we saw before, but
In section 1(7), the last line, and it has to do with the square footage of the per ordering point with no single board to exceed 20 square feet. Can you kind of describe what that looks like to me, or show me a picture?
Well, remember they had the pre-order board, and then they have the
Yeah.
order board, and basically said, hey, if you're going to do multiple boards, you got to make them a little bit smaller, or you could do one larger board up to 30 square feet. Their particular scenario, they wanted a pre-order board, which is the new McDonald's thing, I guess. So you can start looking at your things before you got to order.
Right.
And then, and so that's basically through discussions we had last month, we felt like that was a fair compromise. It also happened to work kind of within their constraints that they use for their corporate style size boards, which my memory serves, it was 4 by 5.
Yeah. Yeah, they had a 10 square foot and a 20 square foot.
So what are you calling an ordering point?
Well, you got the pre-order board, which is
All right.
basically a big menu that you get to look at, but
Yeah.
you don't talk to anybody. And then you actually have your ordering point
Yeah,
where the
that's
little
right.
speaker and
You
the
tell 'em
screen
what
is
you want.
located.
Right.
Yeah.
So the combination of those two cannot exceed 30 square feet.
Per lane.
Is that what we're saying?
per lane.
Lane. So if you're approved for multiple lanes, then you can obviously have the double boards, 2 boards for one lane and 2 boards for another
Yeah,
lane.
2 previews plus the ordering. All right. But the sum of those two can't exceed 30 square feet.
That's
Am I
right.
understanding correctly?
30 square feet per lane, that's
Pardon?
right.
Per lane. Okay. All right.
They explained to us this is a real time saver as far as processing cars through the drive-through.
Yeah.
This pre-board people can look at that. They have an idea of what they want, so when they come up to the speaker, they can go ahead and order and then move right
They've
on
taken
through.
out some parking spaces where there was some, a condition created where people would back out into people that are in the stack lane, so that was a good improvement. And like Noah mentioned earlier, they've added a pretty large landscaped area on the northeast corner where they did have parking. That's up in this area.
Right.
And then they are screening their dumpsters, which is much appreciated, and adding some landscaping in the northwest part of the site. So it should be,
They've also added
site-wise, it should
that
be-
landscape bed down there at the southeast corner
Yeah,
as well, that little
that's
triangular
true.
We
bed.
talked
Yeah.
about that in here.
yeah, those shaded areas there on the upper left image, that's the green space on the site as a result of the project. So they
So-
are adding more green space than they had. And this is a classic example of where a development in the mixed-use town center is clearly moving in a direction more in line with architectural design standards, both from a site development perspective and building appearance and materials. They will be taking down the big freestanding sign as part of this project. So that will bring the signage, and they'll bring the signage all into compliance too with the current provisions, so.
And you're comfortable with the turning radius of the,
I'm not really comfortable with any of the traffic circulation on this site, but it's better than it was.
Yeah,
They-
Improvement.
Yeah, they deemed it accessible, I mean, to have that radius.
this looks a lot like the layout of the one in Clinton.
It's very tight.
That is on a larger piece of property.
Yeah.
And the.
Probably similar in size to the one over at on Cedar Bluff, when they went through and had to renovate that. When they're dealing with their new lot requirements are just a lot larger than what they have, and when
Yeah.
they're trying to go in and renovate these, there's a lot of constraints. And I think based upon the constraints that they have on that particular side, I think they've done a great job of trying to make lemonade out of lemons.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to go back and beat a dead horse, I guess. I'm still messed up on the wording, those last two lines. It says total square footage, sign area of all such boards. To me, that says that 30 feet, square feet is the limit.
Yeah, aggregate.
Per ordering point.
It's the key word. Maybe we ought to put aggregate in there. Maybe
Something
he said we're
else
struggling with
needs
this
to be there. It's
Right.
not clear that,
Well,
that
it
it
needs to be
is
clear.
per lane.
because we want an
which I
applicant from the
understand.
outside to be able to read this and understand what the expectations are.
Right. And I'm a guinea pig.
Well, you want to say the total aggregate square footage?
Yes. Some such, yes. Aggregate would be better. Because it's not clear to me that you multiply the number of lanes, if you will, times the 30 square feet to get the total aggregate.
Maybe we should say the aggregate square footage per lane, because that's our intention.
Yes.
And to me,
Yes,
that's
that
real
would
black and
clarify-
white.
Yes.
Yes.
Move the
Yes.
per ordering point. Do you want per lane or per ordering point?
I think per lane,
Per lane.
per ordering point might be a little ambiguous.
Well, that and it's too specific. I think lane is appropriate.
Total square footage per lane.
What I'm hearing you say, if I'm correct in your interpretation, we have the menu board when you drive through in the lane, and then you have the order board
Yes,
where
ma'am.
you speak what you want. Okay, if the menu board takes up 20 square feet, then the order board can only be 10 square feet. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, then, Ed, I have to go along with you that it's an aggregate. We need to change the language, whatever suits you, Mark, to make clear that that 30
What about we strike the
square
word
feet-
total
Yeah.
and add aggregate square footage, sign area in parentheses is fine, but all such boards
Per lane.
per lane shall be restricted to, and
Yeah.
then strike the word per ordering point.
That's right.
Because you could have something, I mean, quite frankly, that McDonald's sometimes has 2 ordering points in the mornings. They have one person out there that's taking orders, and then they got the traditional little call box taking orders. And so I think if we have it, our intention, at least my intention, is per lane. We're dealing with per lanes.
I agree.
So maybe strike the,
Satisfies me.
So we want it to read that the aggregate square footage, sign area in paren, of all such boards per lane shall be restricted to 30 square feet with no single board to exceed 20 square feet.
perfect. Is that a motion?
Correct.
That's a
That
motion.
satisfies me.
Sounds like a
Thank you.
motion to me.
With that amended language.
You get that?
Yeah, I think I did.
I'll second it then.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I think Mark get it written down. Okay. Item number 9, discussion and public hearing on an amendment to Chapter 2, 3, and 4 of the Farragut zoning ordinance related to the creation of the Outlet Drive Regional Entertainment and Employment District, OD-REE, that will replace the C2RW district. Ready Link applicant, Realty Link applicant.
This ordinance involves some amendments to 3 sections of the zoning ordinance, chapters 2, 3, and 4, involving development along the Outlet Drive corridor on the north side of the interstate. As you all know, you approved some amendments to the future land use map at the recommendation of the CLUP Steering Committee back in April. And then we also conducted a workshop, Planning Commission Board, on June 6th, where we looked at this corridor in more depth and looked at the Topgolf development in this case and other development that could occur along the corridor. And the feeling was that given the very unique character of this type of use and the corridor itself, frankly, it's kind of out on its own, kind of separated from most of the town in some ways. that it might be, we clearly need to make some amendments to the zoning ordinance to try to accommodate this or provide for it. So originally, we were looking at just making some amendments to the regional commercial retail warehousing district because there's only one property that's currently zoned that, and it wouldn't really affect many properties, obviously, and that's the Outlet Mall. But then, as the staff kind of looked at this a little bit closer, we felt like it would probably be more appropriate, at least from our perspective, to look at this more broadly and create a completely new district that would replace the C2RW and would account for really the unique characteristics of not only development that may occur on the corridor, but really the existing development that's already along the corridor and the corridor itself, because it is kind of a unique sub-area of the town. So we put together an ordinance. We presented the draft of that at the staff developer meeting on July the 2nd and went through the applicant's questions or comments on the ordinance. We tried to make amendments based on the input we received at the staff developer meeting. And the end result is this ordinance 1924. And some of the key things that we have done in this ordinance is to obviously very clearly define what a regional recreational and entertainment facility would be as it applies to this zoning district. Create the district itself, to also provide some provisions for these larger regional facilities, entertainment facilities, specifically as they relate to height of accessory structures, compliance with the design standards, wall signage, outdoor site lighting, and things that we talked about at the workshop session back in June. Another thing that we provided for is what's called a master sign for unified development. The city of Knoxville has one of those in the Turkey Creek corridor in the it's a fair amount east along the interstate, but I'm sure you've seen it. And it has the name of the development and some of the tenants, and it does have a digital board with that particular sign. And then we provided some architectural material standards for buildings within this particular zoning district and parking requirements for this regional recreational and entertainment facility. Because it is such a unique use, we at the staff level had no idea how to allocate the parking for this. So we relied on the applicant's input on a number of these things. And hopefully it put in some flexibility in the ordinance to give you all some, for example, with the height of accessory buildings or structures, to look at these things on kind of a case-by-case basis. Same way with the design standards. There's some things in there that promote flexibility because of the context. The most important section of this district is the general description, because that really sets forth what we're trying to do and why we really created this corridor specific district instead of just added another use to an existing district. We looked at our strategic plan and some of the critical success factors that are described in the plan to try to provide some background and why this district was created. It talks about providing for family entertainment venues, providing for development on the north side of the interstate and things like that. So I'll be happy to try to answer any questions. I would note that there has been one change since what was forwarded to you all yesterday, and it deals with the architectural materials section, the very last section, I. And in looking at that this afternoon, I probably should have caught it earlier. The original language talked about, and this is outside of the regional entertainment facility type buildings, other buildings in this district that are more than 2 stories or 25,000 and 25,000 square feet have a 25% masonry requirement on the net facade area. And then it also stated buildings that are 1 story shall provide a minimum of 60% masonry, which was the original masonry percentage that we had in our architectural design standards when they were initially adopted in 2015. So what happens with that is there's a gray area as to how you apply the materials to buildings that are just 2 stories or maybe less than 25,000 square feet. So what the staff is proposing there is just to keep the first sentence, but then just have in the second sentence, all other buildings shall provide a minimum of 60% masonry on the net facade area of the building. That way, you know, every type of building is covered, and it's very clear as to what architectural materials would apply to those type of buildings. So that's the only change that we're proposing.
If our intention is that buildings that are 2 stories and 25,000 square feet provide a minimum of 25%, we're actually saying buildings that exceed 2 stories, which would then mean 3 stories and above. So we may have a verbiage
we can change
issue
that
in the
to
piece
make
that when
it
you
more
say
clear.
exceed 2 stories, that automatically means 3 stories and more.
That's true.
So if our intention is 2 stories, then we need to
At or
spell that
exceed.
out.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
Yeah.
That are or exceed. Maybe you could do something like that. That
Buildings
buildings
that
that are or exceed 2 stories.
And 25,000 square feet, is that okay? Okay. Okay, that was the only change that I had from what was emailed to you all yesterday.
Mark, did you take out the last sentence, buildings shall otherwise comply with all provisions?
What I put there was, and that was just a minor change, all buildings regardless of height and size shall comply with all
Okay.
Okay.
provisions in the ADS. That way it's more clear as what the intent was, so. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Yeah, on 7E, I think probably need to look at the verbiage there, the first 2 sentences. It says for a building in excess of 440,000 square feet and at least 1 building elevation of more than 400 feet. When I first read that, it sounded like we had a building with an elevation is going to have a height of 400 feet.
You mean 400 feet in length? Is what is I
We
think
need
is
to
what it means,
clarify
but
that because
I agree. I think that needs to be spelled out.
Yeah.
400 feet in length? Yeah, that's fine.
That'd be a tall building.
that's going to be 40-story
That was certainly not the
building
intention.
a skyscraper.
Okay. Sometimes I read these things and I don't see something that somebody that has looks at it for
I
the first time
Totally
catches.
understand that. I do the same thing.
What change there? You think 100 feet, what? Is that what?
Length.
Okay.
On the master sign for unified development on which is 8D, as in dog, we've got the sign face shall not exceed 800 square feet per side and shall include at least 3 businesses or tenants. What I'd like to propose that it's possible in the early stages of a development that they may only have 1 business or 1 tenant.
Yeah.
And so we just need to make sure that ultimately, I think the intention is that it's not 1 sign for
Okay.
1 big giant sign for 1 tenant, is that it at least allows
Shall be
3
designed-
businesses.
Shall
But what
be
we don't want to do
designed
is
to
we can't.
include?
Yeah. Say that. I'm sorry.
Shall be designed to include?
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'd like to make a comment, pretty much for the record. the section that says the building contain a minimum masonry percentage of 10%. Last time we talked about this, we had quite a discussion on that percentage, and I'm perfectly fine with that 10%, but I think at that time, and I think now, I'd like to make a point that the reason it's okay, that there is a reasoning behind making that okay. And I'd like to state a couple of those reasons. First of all, this district is located north of the interstate I-40 and thus physically separate from the rest of the town. Second of all, as noted in the general description, much of the area surrounding this district is not a part of Farragut municipal area and not subject to the same requirements. And last of all, this is really a prime real estate, commercial real estate area between two exits and along the interstate. And I think it's well suited to the town to enhance businesses to be there. So we should provide as much flexibility as possible. I make that statement in case someone comes back and said, why did you make an exception in this case? And I think it's important that we say why we did. Because
that's
there
exactly
are some
why.
compelling reasons that we did that.
I would add to that the fact that if, with these standards, we may actually have, Knox County may be willing to say, hey, suggest to the buildings that might be going up in Knox County, these are the standards, if you can live within them, this is an opportunity to can have some cohesiveness along that.
And that's why we recommended creating this new corridor-specific district, really, because we wanted to differentiate, reveal how it's different than the rest of the town, and it is. To me, it's very different because you have to
I just
establish
think it's important that we have that on the record as to why we
I agree.
made that conclusion.
That's good.
But there's a typo on H4, bios 12, instead of bios 12.
Yes.
on what, H4?
Well, yeah. On the low-impact development.
We just need to strike the space.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
On B8,
We need to,
Where's opaque?
B8, the
Let's get you on the
introduction
microphone,
there.
Betty, so we can,
Yes.
wait, hold on. I think Roseanne's got the floor at the moment.
What are you talking about?
No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, go.
Always hear you folks way down there.
We'll try to do a better job of getting in the microphone.
I can hear you. No, no problem. It's Betty Dick.
They can probably hear me next door as well.
Okay. I'm at B8. Master sign, should that be master sign for a unified development is subject to the following development criteria? I put in A and is. Am I reading that correctly? These things that follow the A through J, pardon?
I kind of agree with Roseanne. I think grammatically that would sound more appropriate.
What's
Master sign for a unified development.
for A?
So add
And leave
in-
out, I mean, I'm skipping over the parens
And
and
is it
reading
A
it.
or
Eight, yeah, master sign for
Yeah, it'd be
A
and. That's
unified
true. It'd be and.
development.
And then you would want to add the word is.
To, pardon?
Is.
Yep.
Yeah. Is subject to the
Yes.
following, and then, on A, I've got my note here that I've got this last part of A as a condition of approval for a master sign for unified development. That's redundant. You just said it up above.
Okay, that's fine.
So in that, it removed, in other words,
Just take out for a master sign.
take out all the language after removed,
I got you.
Just shall be removed, period.
period, right,
Okay.
right. And then in C, 8C, you need to take out for a unified development because that's what we're talking about. Only one sign is permitted between Lovell Road and Campbell Station Road. It's what I think it should, how I think it should read.
I agree with that.
Okay. Let's see. On, I'm looking at C. D, C1D, excuse me, front yards, D,
Front yards.
For the
yards.
accessory structures,
C, area regulations, C, and then 1 front yards in D. I always hate when legal documents say, except as provided for elsewhere in this ordinance, or the Farragut Municipal Code. Why do we need both of these, what's the
Some
purpose?
things that aren't covered in the zoning that would be covered in other parts of our municipal code, so it's kind of a catch-all.
But, elsewhere in this ordinance, if we got other things, is it something else in this
Well,
ordinance?
chapter 4, not this zoning ordinance particular, but chapter 4 has a lot of miscellaneous stuff in it.
That's the code though, right? I'm asking, why do we have elsewhere in this ordinance?
because there may be a conflict, and the more conservative conflict would supersede.
Well, we ought to know whether.
Well, but there's different scenarios. I kind of understand where Mark's going with that, but there may be some areas that there's actually, a 25-foot type right-of-way set. Matter of fact, the MUTC might be one that has a completely different setback, and so we just
But
don't want,
that's
we
the
don't want
code,
somebody
isn't
just to
it?
read
No.
this and then say, well, that applies also over here.
No, that's in the
But that's the
ordinance.
code. That's
an
not this ordinance.
No, it's an ordinance. It's not just this. See, we're not just talking about
Read,
this.
read the wording. Except as provided for elsewhere in this ordinance.
But you're.
Oh, you're right. No, you're right. In this ordinance should be struck. But you would
We
leave
don't need
municipal
that.
code in there. I'm sorry, I thought you wanted to strike municipal code. No, you're right. It should not be in this ordinance. That should be struck. It just say, except as provided for elsewhere in the Farragut Municipal Code.
That'd be good.
But is chapter 4
Unless we've got
considered-
something else in this ordinance that I could not find
No.
that contradicted.
No,
it.
But
that's where
my
the setbacks
question.
are.
Is chapter 4 part of this ordinance? Chapter 4 has the miscellaneous things in it.
No, but it's part of the municipal code.
Chapter 4 as a
all of it's
whole is part of the
Yeah,
code.
but it's not part of this ordinance.
Zoning ordinance is part of the municipal code.
And if there's a conflict in here, we need to straighten it
Okay.
out.
Well,
That is, by the way, current language in our zoning ordinance. That part of this ordinance was taken straight from that, so that
Okay.
might need to be
Well, then we
cleaned
can
up
change it,
in
can't we?
other sections.
Right.
I didn't
It's
change
basically what
that.
she's saying is, I'm not sure. To me, it's redundant to have it back in there again in this ordinance.
Right.
So,
It makes me want to look, is there something else in here, which I did, I tried to find something else that would be contradictory. Okay, down to number 2 then, the same section, side yards. I'm looking at the language for side yards and side and rear yards. Well, actually, it says side and rear yards, it's worded all accessory structures. Is this something different from buildings, structures?
Yeah, absolutely. Like parking lots and accessory structure. Structure with a roof on it's a building.
Okay,
Anything else is a structure.
okay, all right. Thank you. Now, under F, streetscape and outdoor open space. There's a lot of wording here I just don't understand, and I'm sure some of you can clarify it
It's
for me.
current language in our zoning ordinance as well. All
Well,
that is. I'm not saying
I'm
that
not-
makes it right, but that was not changed in this ordinance.
Right. I'm looking at active and interconnected streetscape. What does that mean? With visually appealing, functional public spaces. I don't know, if I were trying to follow this, I wouldn't have any idea what in the thunder that means.
Well, it gives you some guidance under 1 and 2.
Visually appealing, okay, I get that.
1 and 2 gives you some guidance on what that might mean. That's
Okay.
it's trying to keep
well,
it from being fragmented. A land planner or civil engineer will understand
yeah.
those terms. It's basically saying, hey, you've got to be
Well,
able to connect it.
And I
with-
can see
via-
if that's
with-
the
for
case.
pedestrians.
If that's that language, I'm not up on that language, so I guess I'll stick with that.
That's a fancy way of saying we want some placemaking, please.
Well,
Sidewalks.
visually appealing means something to me. I can dig that. All right. That's all I have.
Daddy's got something.
Well, Roseanne, where we-
Opaque is pretty vague, and I've seen some awfully ugly opaque.
Where is opaque? Where are you?
Oh, it's way back. It's on
Probably the
B.
screen.
Yeah. Any outdoor storage shall be, yeah.
B1A,
1, 2, 3.
third line down, yep.
Right.
Opaque such
Well,
as.
that's language in our current zoning ordinance as well.
Do we have opaque in definitions?
Well, opaque, we always just refer to Webster's if it's not specifically defined otherwise.
But
It's
it is
just
required to be
Something
architect.
that's,
Compatible, right?
blocks your view. It's opaque. You can't see through it. It's opaque.
That.
But it's required to be architecturally compatible with the primary materials used in the building. So if we're approving what's used in the buildings, then we should be approving what's used to screen.
We can ask for
The,
what kind
the
of.
definition is not able to be seen through, not transparent. I think the idea is what we don't want somebody to do is for somebody to throw up some lattice
Yeah.
and they go, well, I got lattice on my building, so that matches my building, but you can see right through the lattice. And so I think by using the term opaque, we're saying, hey, you need something
Yeah.
that you can't see through.
Right, okay, I get that. But I guess the
Yes.
architecturally compatible
Made
would
several
satisfy-
comments here. Have we done anything
satisfy.
to negate the impact of this thing here?
I think all those are clerical comments. It seem to me.
I'd like to talk about the
They're good
master sign
comments. Good
for a
comments.
second.
Yeah.
The master sign, I think, is a real intriguing thing.
Maybe an example of something similar to kind of what they're Might
They
be
are
looking at
they
it.
are big. I also think that some master signs would hopefully mitigate some applicants asking for other signs and ground-mounted signs. So I like the idea of encouraging master signs in this particular corridor. I also especially like the idea that for every master sign that goes up, a billboard's got to come down. So, but what we've done is we have allocated a maximum of one master sign on all of Outlet Drive between Lovell Road and Campbell Station. And is that necessarily our intention on maybe some other parcels that would be candidates for a master sign that might make sense? Granted, this is the big parcel over there. There are some other parcels that I think we're actually going to talk about, some other parcels on the next agenda item. But I just want to make sure our intention is to only have one master sign. Now, they're big. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But the reality is they're still smaller than billboards as far as total square footage goes.
Well, you forget there's Knox County land there as well.
Oh, that's true. I'm really talking about the land to the west, down
Yeah.
towards Buddy Gregg, and some of that undeveloped land as well as land that could be redeveloped when it gets valuable enough.
Yeah.
It could get redeveloped. And so now again, we could just wait till we have an applicant that wants to do it and deal with it then.
Yeah, I
But I just
think
want to make sure. I like the idea of the master sign. I think it's actually a good thing. It makes sense. I think it's good for business, and it also every time a master goes up, a billboard comes down.
Well, we've also positioned it 3,000 feet from the,
Yeah, and that's intentional because, we allow for the interstate pole sign for gas, food, and lodging within 500 feet of Campbell Station interchange. So what the staff was proposing was just this corridor would just have one of these.
And that may be okay, but
That's our position because we didn't want more than one, or we wouldn't propose
we
more
might
than
see
one.
more, will we see more pole signs
So
on
when you bring it in 3,000 feet from both of those interchanges, you physically.
it makes it a pretty tight little geographic area. And this may be just fine, but my thought is let's say we have one developer that does the Topgolf development for, whatever that development looks like. And then we have another developer that comes to us years from now that has no relation to that development, and they would like to do this. It also gives us another opportunity to pull down a billboard. I just don't want to preclude that from happening, and maybe that is our intention. I'm saying I'm open-minded to it if we felt like that's something we wanted to embrace, if there's another candidate for it, and it also meets this, if we felt like it's there, that 3,000 feet is the number we want to stick to, or maybe it's 1,500 feet or 2,000 feet, I don't know. But is there another candidate site that would make sense where we could have one of these other kind of master signs?
It would be unlikely on that corridor because
I
it's.
would agree.
I think we just
I
stay
would
with
agree.
it.
The rest of the property is more difficult to develop than the property we're talking
You
about
could
tonight.
probably account for all, I would think, any use in that zoning district on a sign like that would be my
I
expectation.
think we stay with the one and let the, development derive an exception down the road in the
Okay.
future.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
that's why I just want to talk about it.
Not really a lot of property out
No,
there
there's not.
outside of this development on that corridor.
That's
You know,
large
so
enough.
that's in the town. So
Mark, I've got a question. Since we're proposing to do away with C2RW and the
Yep.
outlet mall is zoned C2RW, are we automatically rezoning it to this?
we will
Or
have to
is it-
come back before you all to either rezone it to that or to this new district or to C2.
Okay.
Is our land use plan consistent with what we're talking about, or do we need
Yeah,
a
we-
change to the land use plan?
No, we actually changed the land use
We
plan
did that already.
back in
Yeah.
April.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
A lot of those properties south of,
But you don't think we need a designation for this entertainment employment district spelled out on the land use plan? You don't think we need to get that
well,
far
it's
in the
regional
weeds?
commercial, and I think this
That
clearly,
covers
to
that?
me,
Okay.
it really fits in with that.
Okay.
So I don't think we need to. I mean, we did change the future land use map specifically to address this and promote some objectives in our strategic plan.
Okay.
And so, any other questions or comments on it? Yeah.
Okay, ready for a motion?
I move for approval of resolution PC 1909, recommending approval of ordinance 1924.
Second.
With the amendments?
As amended by all our changes that we discussed.
That.
Roseanne.
Roseanne.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Moving on to item number 10, discussion and public hearing on amendment to the Farragut zoning map for parcels 154.06, 154.07, 154.8, 154.09, 154.10, 176.01, and 176.02. Tax map 130 along the Outlet Drive corridor from C-1 and C-2 and R-2 to OD-RE/E, approximately 36 acres, Realty Link applicant.
Okay, obviously, this is related to the previous item. The applicant requested to rezone 7 parcels. All but one are currently zoned regional commercial C2. It is an area that we did update our future land use map just a few months ago. The only property that's not already zoned commercial, regional commercial, is that yellow property that's currently zoned R2, general single-family residential. And, it's pretty clear that that property is not likely to develop under R2. But much of that tract, and the reason it probably historically has not been rezoned to C2 is, at least based on the best available information we have right now, there's a pretty large portion of the property is consumed in sinkholes. And so it's questionable as to how much, if any, of that property is really developable. You may be able to snake a road through there to connect to the property to the west, which it also has some sinkholes, but not to the extent of this R2 property. The sinkholes, as you all know, we have a sinkhole ordinance, and obviously for very good reasons. There's a number of reasons that are provided for in the ordinance. That general area, filters and drains a lot of the storm water, probably in the general watershed out there. So it already right now performs some very valuable functions. And so that's one of the reasons why it was shown on the future land use map, that portion the Outlet Drive corridor as open space. That green area that kind of snakes around is intended to reflect the general location of either steep slopes, those that exceed 15%, or areas that, at least on the topographic map, are identified as sinkholes. So the staff is in support of rezoning the 6 parcels that are already zoned regional commercial to this new zoning district, but we do have to refer to the future land use map, at least at the staff level, when we make a recommendation on the R2 parcel, and we would not be able to support a rezoning of that at this time because it's inconsistent with the future land use map for that reason. If you do choose to rezone it and include it with the rest of this district, it might be useful to have some stipulations or acknowledgement that the property appears to be, severely limited as far as development potential, at least based on current information that we have.
Mark, my question with that is, if you leave it R, whatever it is, residential, is it R2?
Yeah.
The setbacks that come with having a residential property with commercial around it, is that going to come into play?
No, because the way I worded the text was it's property that's developed as residential, and that property is not developed as residential. It's zoned residential. That's specifically why I changed that language to address that.
Well, they'd still be subject to buffers, which are probably not intentionally what we're trying to do
Buffers
tonight.
are only applicable if it's abutting property developed as residential in that new zoning district.
That's the key word.
Key word there, yeah.
It's different language than what's in.
I mean, personally,
C2.
I can't see the issue with commercial on that property. The reality is they still got to comply with our sinkhole
right.
ordinance.
That's true.
And our setback requirements, which is, as last time I checked, was 50 feet from the last closed contour.
For a building, yeah.
And so
that's right.
the reality is if they can comply with the environmentally sensitive areas, I can't see an issue with rezoning that to commercial. I understand the staff's intent to put an extra layer of protection in there, but I think we've already got it covered elsewhere in the municipal code.
And
I agree with that. Surely we don't have zoning for other sinkhole areas that we have around the town.
No.
And it seems like we're picking this one.
Well, there
particular
probably
area.
has been some areas where, with other sinkholes, where we've really tried to encourage an open space designation.
Yeah, that's
But the reality is if there is some developable property there outside of the sinkholes and the requirements of the setbacks of the sinkholes, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
And that's fine, yeah.
And leave this, not as residential, but included.
Well, we'd go ahead and as
rezone
it would go ahead and rezone it as the applicant has requested. I don't necessarily think there needs to be any additional language. I think we're on the public record here tonight to say, hey, you may have some sinkholes. You're going to have to deal with this through TDEC or the Corps of Engineers and whatever else to determine the designation of what's a sinkhole and what's not a sinkhole. So I think we've already got that on the record. I think the reality is that I'm comfortable with approval of commercial zoning. That way it's consistent with the rest of the zoning, knowing good and well that they're still going to be subject to ordinances elsewhere that can protect those environmentally sensitive areas.
I'm fine with that. That sounds good.
It's all going to be.
When you say commercial, are you saying they just go ahead and put it back into that?
Well,
that
I'm actually, you know
parcel
what?
back in with the other 6, right?
Yeah, what I'm talking about is go ahead and include it as part of this OD-RE/E zoning district.
I agree.
R2.
I agree.
It's in the ordinance. It's all 7.
It just means don't delete what you said you wanted to delete.
That's what you would just be recommending approval as it was
As it was
submitted.
written in our
This is
package.
the 7 parcels to this new zoning district.
Sounds good.
The microphone, please.
We'd like to get your name and address for the record.
My name is David Letzinger. I live at 31800 Pond Creek Road, Philadelphia, Tennessee. As a property owner on the very western end of what we're talking about, there are some issues with the parcel there's some with ours. We have a much more workable parcel. The concern after hearing the discussion is we really want to see Topgolf come in. We'd like to see the whole area develop. Should that not happen, how difficult is it going to be for me to get our property back to C2 again? Because we may, I don't get pigeonholed.
Do you want C2 or R2?
We're C2 now.
Two now, yeah.
Okay.
He's west.
Oh, you're talking about
of
the other parcel. Okay.
Yeah, we're the very western parcel that abuts Buddy Gregg.
What I would suggest to you, under your particular scenario, is you'd have an approval of this commission and a recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Alderman. The Board of Mayor and Alderman would have to hear a rezoning with 2 readings. Typically, what I've seen in the past to occur is as soon as you've got your approval from this body and you've got your approval on first reading, then you could go ahead and go to closing. That way you don't have the risk of owning a piece of property that somebody else, a potential buyer, rezone that you don't want. I can't necessarily see anything in this zoning district that I wouldn't want as a property owner, but there's probably maybe something that I've missed and there probably are some things in R2 that you might be eligible for use-wise that you wouldn't be eligible in this. But that might be a way.
C2.
Excuse me. C2 that you might be eligible that you otherwise wouldn't be, but that might be a way that you could handle it. Now, I don't know how your purchase contract or whatever is what benchmark dates you're trying to deal with, but that's a way it's kind of been dealt with in the past, is that once you've got an approval from the Board of Mayor and Alderman, then you feel comfortable saying, okay, I'm more talking on the buyer's side, then they would feel comfortable saying, okay, well, now we're good to go ahead and go closing. That way you don't have that risk. Otherwise, I mean, I personally, I think I'd be comfortable if you wanted to go to C2. If you were to come to us some period ago and wanted to go to C2, I'd still have the same arguments tonight that say, hey, I'm comfortable with this being the proximity to I-40 and Outlet Drive, et cetera, and adjacent properties, all the other reasons. Yeah, it's appropriate for you to be commercial. You still got to deal with whatever sinkholes you may or may not have. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that there might be a couple different ways to cover you. So,
okay, yeah, I've got the zoning, most favorable zoning now that we feel like. And I just hate to get in a position where if something, because there's the challenges next door with the sinkhole situation that you have with the slope has to come all the way down to the closed contours.
Yeah.
Then that could extend for 700 or 800 feet. It just seems pretty tough to me with the experience that I have doing that type of work that, there's got to be a reasonable limit around that closed contour, so it just doesn't go forever.
Well, the good news is that the town of Farragut's not the one that determines whether it's a sinkhole. You actually get an expert, usually with consultation with TDEC, to determine whether or not it's a sinkhole. And so you're not leaving it up to somebody here. You got a third party saying, hey, yes, it is or it isn't. The 50 feet, I can't see how the 50 feet is what the 50 feet is as far as the setback goes. And we're kind of getting off into the weeds, and I didn't mean to do that. But I guess here's some options for you would be to go ahead and accept it and go take it all the way through second reading, or the other option was try to close between that first reading and the second reading. That way you don't have the risk.
I can't see that.
But let me add a little bit to this. We have a land use plan. The land use plan calls this regional commercial. Regional commercial, to me, it's appropriate that would be C2 or this new zoning district. So if you came before the Planning Commission and said, well, I want this to go back to C2 for whatever, if something, it all goes the hell in a handbasket, you want it C2, that's a very reasonable land use. Yep. In this land use, we have this as a land use designation. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a reasonable request.
Okay, I just wanted to, I was sitting there listening to all this, and I'm thinking if even if the center property, for whatever reasons, doesn't cut the mustard, and the other side goes, I'm kind of limited because I'm sitting next to Buddy Gregg,
right?
And I may never get a call from a bowling alley or whatever, So
well, you're right.
So I don't want to get trapped in that. But we know we have induction points out there, and I really feel like that they can be worked around to make the whole project go with what they're proposing. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, we're glad you showed up.
Are you currently C2?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yeah, he is.
Any more questions or comments?
Is he adjacent to Buddy Gregg or across?
He's
adjacent. He's this property right there.
Oh, okay.
He's the furthest west parcel.
Westernmost.
So do we have an emotion, we have a
That-
motion already.
Ask for one, please.
Move for approval, Resolution PC 19-10, which recommends approval of Ordinance 1925 and including the 7 parcels listed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So just for clarity, we've gotten rid of the R2. It's all for all 7 parcels.
Right. Well, so let's go through the board, mayor, and alderman, but
Yeah.
this commission's finished with it.
Okay.
Moving on to item number 11, discussion on the concept for Admiral Landing, a redevelopment of the old Phillips 66 gas station, 11321 Kingston Pike, 1.19 acres, zone C-1, MUTC Doug Justice, owner. And this is for discussion purposes only.
Before I turn it over to the property owner, everybody's familiar with this property, obviously, Phillips 66. Generally, what they're wanting to do, this is kind of a rough idea of the building, at this point at least. And then this is kind of a very, very preliminary site layout. It's pretty much a total of around 9,000 square feet of building space and a couple of fairly large outdoor patio areas, which all those things are certainly highly recommended in our mixed-use town center, which this property is within. They've also been trying to work with the property to the north to get access so that people can get out of the property, in particular, further north, back out of the stacking lanes there at the intersection of Campbell Station and Kingston Pike. And then they also have trying to get an agreement to have some shared parking between the 2 parcels, which for the uses they're proposing here, restaurants, mostly restaurant type uses, they are going to need a fair amount of parking. So that would be something that would otherwise be very difficult without those kind of additions for this project to make a go of it. So I think that's a good concept from the staff's perspective to utilize the land out there and hopefully a development that would be beneficial to that corner in the mixed-use town center. One of the concepts that is new really to the area that they're looking into is basically setting the building up to where mobile food vendors could be brought into the building and rotated, in different days of the week or times of the year and things like that. And that's what's shown up on the upper portion of the site, those 2 mobile vehicles up there. As you know, food trucks currently in the town are only allowed if they're part of an approved event. And this is a little different, too, because the trucks aren't sitting out on the parking lot. They're actually in a space, a constructed space that's designed for that. So when we met with the owner a couple times on this, it was such a kind of new concept that we felt like they probably should come before the Planning Commission very early on and just get your all's reaction and thoughts to this concept. So that's why they're here, to try to see whether, they're on the right track or you all have some major concerns about it. And that way they can move forward in a more informed manner. So with that, I'll just turn it over to the owner and architect, and they can walk through this project with you.
Need to know who you all are and an address.
All 3, please.
All right. My name is Carlos Cortez. My address is 1523 Charlottesville Boulevard here in Knoxville, Farragut 37922.
Doug Justice, 1721 Norbert Lane, Knoxville, 37922.
Brian Nicholson. I'm Brian Nicholson, 305 Dominion Circle, Farragut. I'm architect with Studio 4 Design.
Okay, first gentleman, you were Carlos. What was your
Carlos
function?
Cortez, C-O-R-T.
What was your function?
Pardon?
We're owners, we're co-owners.
Yeah, we're co-owners. We're both developers.
Oh,
We
okay,
own the,
okay.
the land there.
You're okay.
So we're developing it together, 50/50.
Well, I'd like to jump in and be the first to say that I'm super excited about this. There's something that I've experienced a lot of times on vacation, and that you guys may or may not have experienced it down on 30A. There's an area called the Hub.
Yes.
And
Seaside.
and my family and I, when the Hub opened a number of years ago, I thought, man, we need something like this at home. And you guys are kind of taking it to the next step with incorporating kind of the food truck with it, and that's something we've spent some time. This planning commission, we actually created a kind of a special group to study food trucks a number of years ago when we really struggled of how to incorporate food trucks into the town and keep it safe so the kids aren't running across parking lots and getting ran over. And this is unbelievably exciting and something that this body, as well as the staff and myself, we've thought about is, how do we make the town of Farragut attractive to millennials? Because it is expensive. I mean, and quite frankly, the average age in the town of Farragut is about 11 years older than the rest of the average age in Knox County. And so we're trying to figure out how do we do that? And this is one of the ways that we do it, that we create kind of a sense of downtown. And I think it's a wonderful way. Obviously, we've got to work through some of the details, because I'm sure there's when it's new and exciting and innovative, there's going to be a lot of questions. But anyway, I'm ecstatic, and I hope you guys keep working, trudging forward on it, and don't give up, and because I'm sure there'll be some little hurdles along the way. But it's a killer site with a gateway to our town, and what a wonderful way to be able to utilize that site.
One thing I want to point out is having rotating food trucks.
Can you get
Yeah,
the audience listening?
Is having the rotating food trucks, if you will, rotating chefs, is you get the following of those trucks. So you bring people in from other areas of the town. So someone that lives in Bearden that's following Johnny's taco truck, they'll look on the Facebook page, they will come to Farragut. So you draw that younger crowd that will follow those trucks.
Yeah,
That's very true. I experience that on a daily basis where we work. We have rotating food trucks that come in.
Uh-huh.
There are people that come from all over town to our site for these food trucks.
And
It's
they're
true.
very excited about it just because it gives them year-round operation. So they have a lot of demand for their food. The ones that set up downtown, for example, what's the name of that?
Central Village Station.
Central Village Station?
It's all out. Most of it's outdoors.
So if it's cold, it's raining, it just doesn't work.
You're the developer, right? The two
Yes,
of you are
yes,
developers.
yes, we are. Yes,
Are
we are.
you going to be leasing from Mr. Justice?
I'm
then?
Doug Justice. This is
Oh,
Carlos.
you're Doug Justice.
And they just
okay.
didn't put his name on there. We're co-owners.
Okay.
They would actually be the landlord.
Yeah, we're
Yes.
the landlords and develop it.
So we'll develop it
inside.
and then actually develop the site and put the business in on the 5,500 square foot that you see where the trucks are. We'll be leasing out the two spaces adjacent to it. Will be two leasing spaces, which we're hope to have someone like Cruise Farm or something like that follow.
Yeah.
When we drive the traffic there, we've already spoken to them. I don't know if you guys have ice cream at Cruise Farm, but we're hoping to bring someone like that to help bring that traffic.
Any given night, there's a line out the door during a summer
get in
night
there.
on Cruise Farm down on Gay Street. It's
In fact,
it's great. That's downtown Knoxville's not the same downtown Knoxville it was 15 or 20 years ago. And I think, and then the town of Farragut gets pretty quiet after hours. And I think this is a really cool way to be able to try to do something. I think by having some tenants in there, that year-round tenants, that'll really help your performa versus just relying on the food trucks.
Yeah.
There's just a ton of great things. This solves some of the issues that we struggled with food trucks and trying to figure, well, where do people go to the bathroom and
Yeah.
how do you deal with that? What do you deal with the inclement weather? And this is different than the Hub because they don't really have a way to do this with the food trucks. They can park them out on the sidewalk, and granted, they maybe have a little bit better year-round weather than we do.
Yeah.
But I think this is a real innovative way to be able to incorporate kind of the best of both worlds, and real exciting.
I'm excited about the concept because I think we all experienced food trucks, but I've been impressed with the fact that you get the quality of food and the variety.
They're so passionate
And
about
you
the
having
food,
this
man.
inside concept is just outstanding to me. And
They just do a few things. They do it really well. When they sell, the taco trucks, you got a few tacos, and they're passionate about what they do. And it's always,
So are you envisioning that the trucks are just gonna drive into this
no,
space?
they'll be brought in with equipment. They won't actually be running coming into the building. We'll have equipment that will bring them in.
Oh, okay.
So they won't be on.
They
All
won't
right.
be running and
They won't be
putting
running.
exhaust fumes in.
Okay.
So once they come into the building, then we're designing an event system to hook their up to, so that way they can cook and it will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, and they'll also have ways like where you plug in an RV for electricity and plug in for water. They can all set that up, and that technology already exists today. And that way, the food trucks that are used to running a generator or something, they can hook up to, we'll call it shore power.
And that's another thing. And then let's do a generator run, so they're excited about that as well.
How many food trucks at one time do you envision?
I would say safely 3.
Max.
It'd be 2 to 3 max, yeah, max 3.
So you could put 2 or could put a couple in tandem.
Yeah,
it's kind of what you're thinking. Okay,
yeah.
It's long enough you could put 3 of them in sequence, or 3 of them.
So you have 2 trucks, maybe a dessert truck, two entree trucks, and maybe a dessert truck in there.
So where you have the ice cream shop and the rental space, those would be fixed
Correct.
tenants, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah,
it'll complement the tap. So the tap in
Yeah.
food truck. So that the idea is to have the ice cream folks as a permanent tenant, and you have the food truck, and then the brewery that adds to.
Envisioning beer permits, or
yes,
is this?
yes. There'd be a brewery there.
Yeah.
There'd be a brewery.
A brewery.
In tandem with the food trucks. So in the 5,500 square foot space, that will be.
And not a bar, not serving other kinds of alcohol?
Initially, beer was all we were, proposing.
Well,
but,
that's what I want to know, right? Whether we're
We've
going
only
to
got
have
3
just a bar here or
taverns.
what?
We were looking at the concept of bringing wine in there as well as potentially liquor. I think it's still in flux as far as what we want to do with that.
Will you be rotating the same trucks through weekly or whatever? How does that work?
The good news is there's like over 50 different types of food truck vendors in Knox County right now. And so we can, given the fact that it's an all-year-round venue, we can rotate some of the best food trucks through. And so in any given week, you'll have just pick of the 50, if you will. And, we'll have a schedule out that, as far as we can to see, and folks can go online. And the Central Food Filling Station does that, where they have a calendar online that shows all the food trucks.
Books all the way through December, they have their food trucks laid out. So you know what day, so what truck's going to be there. So that's kind of what we'll do. We'll have it.
And these trucks are in a building, right?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yeah, we'll be pulled inside the building. And
So
there's
you're-
roll-up doors there. So on the back side of the building, there'll be a courtyard there. Those will be roll-up doors, so it'll be a very indoor-outdoor feel. That's the one thing, that Carlos and I, we have families and play a lot of sports. And, when we leave the sporting venue, it's like everybody wants to go to dinner. And the kids always end up directing where everybody goes. They want to be somewhere where they could get up and move around.
Yeah.
And they go out and play some games and things like that. We want to make sure that concept is in place to where it's a very family friendly.
Right. And open and fun, vibrant type of setting.
As someone that for years bought their gas at the Phillips 66.
Are you going to be sad to see that building go?
Yeah. A lot of my money went into that building. But I quit going because I couldn't get in and out. It was dangerous to try to stop and pull in from Kingston Pike, and there was no way that I was going to try to pull out of there and go left onto Kingston Pike. And the same thing if I was coming east on Kingston Pike, turning onto Campbell Station and trying to get in. Fortunately, I never did, but I saw lots of people get rear-ended. Yeah. So I'm very interested in how I can get in and out safely.
Well, I think the biggest thing is having that the easement that we're getting with their neighboring business, where you enter up by the fire hall?
That
turn in
far
there,
down.
and
You'll
then
be
you
able
drive
to
down.
get-
So it's not as hard. You're not in that hard corner when you turn in. So I think it benefits.
In the flow rate, we're going to cut off that one. How there's multiple ingresses and egresses there. The one that's adjacent to
nearest the red light, the
red
right on the
light,
corner,
Kingston one.
that'll be closed up. So we'll just have
So
one
close
on
up.
each
So,
side.
Yeah, it'd be further down and then the same thing
And
on the station.
on Kingston Pike, what do you intend to do? Are you going to close that one too, or just?
We'll just have one. So there's two
Just
now.
the one.
There'll be
Okay,
one. It's the
okay.
furthest one away from the intersection.
one away, okay.
Yeah, the furthest one down. Yes.
Campbell Station Road.
And that's exactly it. That's what we're
They
working
probably
with
would
Mark
need
and
to
Tina. So we can definitely willing to, whatever our suggestions are on that.
See anybody turning left out of that into either way.
We've already had some preliminary meetings with Mark and with engineering and kind of got some staff input on how they'd like to see those entrances and exits work, how egress would work through the site and be safe for all the public, and still have good access and visibility for the business. I think we have a good idea of how to go with staff support and their directions on how to do that.
Okay, good.
Can we hear that?
I missed the conversation.
I mean, what I suspect is the staff's going to want to see some right-in, right-outs.
Yeah, I'll have to talk with Daryl about that, the town engineer. But it's doable. I mean, we'll just have to figure out what scenario would work the best for that.
Clearly, your conversations with Daryl and Matt.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
and I think we're here tonight a lot on the concept of the food trucks indoors. It's such a new concept. Get feedback from the board, on that idea, and make sure there's no.
I'm just going to bring it up because you know how we make our money with sales tax
Yes,
and food.
single point of sale entry. Everything will come through one single point of sales, and we'll pay them out as they go. They won't, it'll be through one sales unit.
Oh, okay.
So not each
the
food
sale is
truck will
considered
have
a
to
town
report?
of Farragut
You won't pay
sale.
at the food truck itself?
You will pay, but everybody will use our point of sale system.
Okay, I got you.
So when you go up and
Makes
pay,
sense.
everything will funnel into one, and at the end of the night, we will.
Food
Right
truck
there.
shows up, you actually hand them your POS and say, hey,
POS.
put it up on your little counter. This is the system you're going to
They'll run
use.
it through there.
They can keep track of their sales, and then you guys can,
We'll
they can.
deduct out the taxes and our cut, and
Okay.
we'll write them a check at the end of the day. So.
But the,
Not the line.
so
But are they taxed in where they're domiciled, or are they taxed in town of Farragut? That's my question. And just for my information, I
Whatever we
think
need to do, that could be something
I
up
think
for concern.
I think the food trucks will probably be taxed in where they're domiciled.
well, not necessarily if they're collecting the money and then paying the food truck as a subcontractor or a vendor.
Yes.
The sales tax would be the 9.25 here in Farragut. I'm sure the food trucks can do it both ways. So if the food trucks
I'd
show
be
up at a venue,
curious
but I
about
think
that.
what they're proposing is that with one point of sale system,
Sales
they're
tax
going to
collected
collect basically everything for the tap and the food trucks. Now the two tenants, they're going to do their own because they're more of a traditional fixed tenant. But I think the way they're describing, it's going to be based upon whatever entity they create at this address.
Yes, correct. Yes, exactly.
You just about have to do that if you're selling alcohol.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're probably, yeah, that's true.
Yes, exactly.
But that wouldn't include the ice cream shop, for example, and
Those are
whoever's
separate.
permanent.
Yeah.
They'd do their own thing, right?
Yeah.
I see us having to obviously amend our ordinances in some way if we want to protect. I like that you have the food trucks housed. We've struggled with food trucks, one, from the sales tax revenue part of it, and two, from the fact that we're the suburbs.
Yeah.
Where they allow food trucks in the city of Knoxville to come in is downtown in their city area. And so we struggle with, they wanted to be able to have, Casual Pint wanted to have their food trucks every weekend, but it takes up parking space. You've got people in the parking lot. It's not really built for that philosophy. So
Yes.
if we do this, I think we need to make sure that we're protecting, because we could end up with another place where, like a food truck parking lot, and someone says, well, I want a parking lot with food trucks in it, and I'm not sure that I would support that.
Well, this is very
This is in a
different.
building.
Yeah, I
I mean,
think
this
this
is
is black
in
and
a,
white.
this is in an
Yeah, it's
enclosed
black and white.
space that's designed for that. To me,
Well,
it's
that's what I
just a-
mean.
I think it's an outstanding
Me,
concept.
yeah,
for
sales
the
tax, I can
interior.
understand as an alderman, the sales tax is, but for me, it was safety. Is how do we
Yeah.
deal with safety in these parking lots?
Yeah.
Because I've been to food trucks all over the country, and that's a challenge when they're just set up on the side of the street.
And that's a much safer system right there.
There is something that
run across the road,
I see
seaside.
here, and you definitely need the parking. So I would not say try to reduce your parking by any stretch of the imagination, because I think you're going to be busy. I mean, if you're, like I said, just thinking of Cruise Farm and how busy they are and some of these, so you're generating a lot of traffic, which is all good things. Would you talk about are you getting some cooperation from your neighbor to the north?
Absolutely. We're almost ready to sign.
Okay,
Like,
let
we
me,
literally-
there's a fly in the ointment that your civil engineer may or may not, or whatever consultant you're using for your design, may or may not have come up with. You're going to have a little bit of a challenge with that existing property line. There's some setback minimums on that property line. The town of Farragut has dealt with other areas in the town where you have property lines in a parking lot with separate owners. But there might want to be some discussions, because I'm looking at the aerial map of how to tie in. And quite frankly, your peak times are going to be different than the medical office next
works
door,
great, yeah.
which works out great. This really should be good for them. It should make their building a lot more valuable by generating traffic. So it'd be hard for me to think that they would be opposed to this. But there's going to be a challenge. You've got 3 kind of dashed lines in there. It kind of looks like an easement. Really, that's probably a property line with some setbacks in it. Those are going to be some things that are going to be a little bit of a challenge to the town of Farragut of trying to get their arms around. How do you deal with a property line in a shared parking lot with 2 different owners? Now, if you're buying the property next door, this is a non-issue. I'm assuming if you're not buying the property next door, we may want to think about, as we're creating some text amendments in this in the C1 and maybe even the MUTC of how to address situations like this where you've got some shared parking where they obviously cannot meet a parking setback requirement from a property. Mark's nodding his head. I may have lost you guys or some other folks.
I know exactly.
Because I'm getting off in the weeds, but what I don't want you guys to do is all of a sudden you develop this awesome concept plan that evolves into a site plan, an engineered site plan, and the town of Farragut says, well, we can't accept that because you've got these funny little setbacks that has to do with your setbacks, the parking lot, not building setbacks, but parking lot setbacks. But I guess what I want to do is just think about ways that we could work through this, because this is something that I think the commission is supporting. I sure know the citizens of this town would really like to see this, and I think you need the parking. So you don't want to start reducing the size of your parking lot, because then we're just creating a whole mess. If all of a sudden there's stacking issues out on Kingston Pike, we don't want that. So Mark, if you got any ideas, this is not something we got to talk about tonight, but you may want to start talking about with the applicant of how to deal with this funny parking arrangement with a property line going down the parking lot.
Is there any existing shared parking that you've dealt with at Farragut? They've done that?
Well, you have some shared parking provisions in the parking and loading section. I'd have to look at that, but.
Well, we have some easements where you could do a joint permanent access and do some easements, and so we've got some parking language. But what's different about this is we're creating a new
property lines.
We're creating a new parking lot, and we're going a parking lot, and we're going over a property line. We're paving over a property line, which otherwise is not really permissible within the zoning it is today. And so this may be something, and again, there's no reason to spend a whole lot of time talking about it tonight. But it's neat. I just don't want to see your deal fall apart because of this one stupid thing.
I think that's pretty easy to fix. I've got some thoughts on it.
This is going in the direction that we've talked about for MUTC.
And about shared parking, I'm all over.
Yeah, that's
that.
exactly right. So this is we're going.
Exactly
we've just
right.
never had an applicant, and to pick on Roseanne a little bit, to be our guinea pig to say, okay, this is kind of how we deal with this under this particular scenario. So I mean, it's real exciting.
I mean, honestly, without the shared parking, particularly with these uses, you couldn't do it.
No.
You couldn't do this project.
Right.
Not that point.
So.
get
And
most
that
of the
if
neighbors,
it's
on
something the
board.
community wants to see and encourage, then and shared parking is clearly something we want to encourage, more efficient use of surface parking. That's one of the things that we talked about a lot when we changed our parking, updated our parking and loading section a couple of years ago. Then I think we could make some. I think it'd be relatively simple from staff's perspective to address this.
Okay.
And we could tweak the language.
Elevated rotunda occupied or just architectural feature?
It'll be occupied.
Is that the brewery?
Yeah, exactly. That's where the
Looks to be because of the
Story
height.
there?
Process.
No, it's just a tall.
Okay, so open air kind of atrium.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that fits our
Iconic
design for our town center. That looks mostly like a EFS. We've got a certain amount of brick.
As a matter of fact, I was going to plug red brick. I'm a big fan of red brick. I like brick better than I do other materials. But this might be a good opportunity for your architect to chime in and say, hey, start pointing, and that way you can get some reaction from this board.
Sure. So currently, I would say that the colors of the materials that you see just differentiate different materials, not necessarily the actual colors of materials. We're very early in the project. We're starting to study what these things might be, but we are all on board with being completely compliant with all of Farragut's architectural standards. We think this is primarily a brick and stone building. The large pieces that you see, we foresee these.
Will be still my heart.
Some type of stone. It may not be a natural stone. It may be some kind of a manufactured product, but a masonry stone of some sort.
Right,
A couple
for it to be
different
built.
colors of brick. But I'm well aware. I've done other buildings in Farragut. I'm well aware of the architectural standards, and we don't don't see ourselves trying to skirt around any rules or anything like that. As far as colors of materials,
We're going to go with pink. That work?
Just go on the private.
Fuchsia.
Bright blue.
I was joking on the previous conversation about the blue wall, so I'll just check.
as far as current colors of brick and everything like that, we're really early in the planning stages of what those might be.
Well, I just want to be on the record. It means that there's expectations, and the goal here
Yeah,
is try to get some feedback.
Mark's done a great job kind of laying that out, giving us all the stuff so we could plan accordingly.
Okay.
And
I have a comment. I'd like to make a comment here. The handout that we have provided to us shows all these photographs of what I would call a beer garden with picnic tables and
Yes,
string
yes.
lighting and all that.
yeah,
Where is that?
that's going to be.
On your backside.
That'd be predominant to the roadside here? or-
No, it would be on
On
the
the
back
back.
side.
See the trucks.
I do too, but I want him to say it. But he also says here.
Okay. Yeah,
Probably in that area.
Yes.
And those are just scale, so.
I was confused because you got two
kind of
outdoor
picture what it's gonna
patios,
look
and
like.
one of them is right there on the main street, on the main corner, I guess it is.
Where I could see two outdoor patios being real handy is if you had live music on one patio,
Exactly.
and you had somebody just wanted to grab some ice cream or sip a beer and not have as much noise, you could be on the other patio.
Yeah.
Obviously, but the patio that's closest to the intersection, you may want to think about some ways to try to corral your pedestrian traffic out there, especially small children. All of a sudden, they're licking their ice cream, and they, for some reason, want to take off and run out in the road. These are, it'd be a terrible PR event for you, and horrible for obviously the child.
We're actually going to do that on the backside as well, so that way parents can feel free to let their kids kind of move about a little bit.
I like the idea of having the two patios, but you might think about there's a funny big box out there, and I can't know if that's a traffic signal box or
Yeah, there is,
a utility box.
Yeah, I don't agree.
Man, it'd be awesome. Whoever's in charge of that box, you could figure out a way to either put
a
that box
statue. I
underground
keep saying we put a statue of David Smoke on that,
on that box.
pointing in two different
Yeah,
directions.
it is nice though. I agree for sure.
You could do a lot just with some low hedges or some landscaping, some things like that with that patio. But I kind of like the idea of two patios. Yeah. Yeah. Well, not necessarily adult, but maybe you have one that's more of your party patio, which is
Exactly.
a great location. You don't have any residential neighbors to worry about, and then you got maybe the other patio on the other side. So, which is also part of the iconic feature that everybody would see from the intersection.
Also inside, you're going to be serving on the inside?
Serving beer.
It says tap room and
Yeah,
food
tap room,
trucks.
yeah, it'd be.
You'll have an inside seats as far as tables?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Oh yeah, so indoor outdoor seating.
Okay.
So,
There's some pictures in there of kind of concept drawings of what that inside tap room might look like.
just some pictures, some places that we kind of going to use to.
Mark, there might I'm going to call it the string lighting, which I'm a big advocate of. I think the string lighting is really cool and is part of that atmosphere. That technically that may violate our lighting ordinance. As we're rewriting some text, we may want to think about the string lighting and how to incorporate the string lighting into this and make sure we just don't miss something. Because I think that string lighting is an important part of the ambiance.
Yeah, I agree. It's part of that.
Part of the ambiance, but my concern in this whole concept is whether it is going to be family friendly.
Absolutely.
I just can envision with the string lighting and all that kind of an atmosphere that it's going to be more like a honky tonk.
Absolutely.
Our market, Roseanne, I'll make you feel a little more comfortable. There's a beer bar that's a tenant of ours down at Renaissance, and their crowd is a family crowd, and those people will come in. Even when they have live music, it is not it's a beer and wine bar, and it's not a honky tonk crowd. That's just not the Farragut market.
Definitely not going to be.
No, and that was a concern of ours too. But that has never been an issue, and nor would I think it'd be an issue. I mean, quite frankly, usually a craft brew beer is a little more expensive than PBR. And so you're just not going to get just a crowd looking just to go wild and get dollar drafts.
Not Joe's in there in the town center.
Yeah, that's
Right.
exactly
That's what I'm saying.
Not that either. And this wouldn't concern me a bit.
Given the square footage and the use, we're going to have to amend our allowance of pubs. Is it a pub? What do we call that? The brewery?
Tavern.
The tavern permit.
Tavern.
3 right now, and we have a limit on the size.
Yeah, we've already asked them to get in touch with Allison about that and just work through that.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
This may be a whole
the
different
specifics
thing.
of that.
We had a group of guys that wanted to do a brewery a number of years ago and
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to fit it into our ordinance. It's going to require a text amendment anyway. I love the idea of having the vats in there and actually brewing different beers and doing that. It's unbelievably popular and a lot of fun. So,
But they didn't want to do food, and that was a key issue.
and that
we
was
were-
that was a big issue.
Which
They-
we
well,
added
there was other
into-
issues at that location that
Yeah.
had to do with the fresh market and all
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
but nevertheless, it's going to require some amendments. That's going to go from this body up to the board, mayor, and alderman to be able to see this come to fruit.
Will you work with them? My concern with the lighting on this property is it's there on a very busy corner. Will you work with them on the lighting so we're not interfering with any kind of visibility on that busy intersection with?
Yeah, it'll be like the Starbucks corner up here. Yeah, it'll be similar, because the building will be similar to that and its placement on the site. But, yeah, that'll be all part of the site plan review when that comes before you.
I see a dumpster enclosure, but I don't see the, where you would be connecting to the other property, to the east.
Yeah, see where the number 15 is? Well, there's a lower.
No. No, you've got to connect to this other property
Well,
over
there's the
here.
creek there. That's the one. That's where there's not an easy. They'd have to build a bridge to get across that creek to connect with that adjacent property, which is the Allen property.
No, I don't mean a car.
Oh, you're talking about pedestrian?
Yeah,
There's a
pedestrian.
sidewalk. There's a sidewalk there now, isn't there?
Yep.
If the Craig Allen property develops, then we're going to make him have a walking trail, so
Yeah,
a
but
connection to the walking trail is what I'm looking
Can you
at.
make
Yeah.
them connect to? They're gonna have. To
There's not an
build a
easy
bridge.
way. I mean, it's a significant bridge to get across that. I mean, there's a sidewalk connection on Kingston Pike, and there's a fair amount of topography drop off there to that creek. I mean, it'd be a challenge to get it. I know that the Allen property had proposed possibly a new connection, maybe where Jamestown Boulevard. Is that the
Yeah,
right-
there's a bridge for the entrance, yeah.
Yeah, where a bridge, and so maybe there would be a little more interconnectivity. But I tell you what, it'd be a challenge to try to do any other pedestrian connectivity right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be adding a lot of sidewalks with this development. A lot of those, kind of that light brown,
And
that's all new.
sidewalks.
That's all new pedestrian facilities, so they would be doing a lot of that. So there would be the lateral connection. There's, like you said, an existing sidewalk along Kingston Pike, and Gamble Station Road, and they may have to do some extension of that, on Campbell Station Road. I don't recall what's out there, but they'll definitely have to have the facility across the entire frontage of both of those streets at a minimum, and then connections from the site to the sidewalk, just like we would require of anybody else.
So what is number 4?
Parking spots. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Is that handicap spots? Is that what that is?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Handicap spots.
Yeah, just
Same-
total
same
count,
out here,
all your
same
parking
here.
spots count.
It's very conceptual, this plan here. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't,
keep in mind, this is very
Yes.
conceptual. We wanted to get feedback. We'll go back to the drawing table and spend more money getting better.
I'm
plans.
going back to thinking about the colors and the materials for the exterior. I'm thinking about what's already there. Jake Ogle and that group have really done a good job with Starbucks, that building, for certain. And then we've got the Campbell Station Inn on the other corner and Rick Terry on the other one, right? So brick seems to be the
Well, it is
theme there,
RTC.
so to speak, and of course, I think you can modernize the look somewhat like you've got
well,
here.
it has
but
to be at least 75% brick, or,
Right.
well, brick, actually,
Yeah, brick.
Yeah,
for
brick.
on all 4 elevations,
In MUTC.
because it's in the
But
mixed-use
I'm
town
thinking
center.
I wouldn't like to see it painted white or cream colored or whatever, it's kind of
Since all
depicted
the
here,
other,
but,
other corners are red
No,
brick.
I think our
I
initial
should see
thought is to keep it
red
consistent
brick.
with the town center concept.
or some
that you see up there.
combination.
Don't we have to make it appear like it's 2-story and with iconic,
It's smaller than 2 acres.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have some
I forgot.
eligibility on this to we don't have to force them to quite go up as mine. And quite frankly, I think they've hit the iconic element real nice on right there.
Good taller building.
Center, yeah.
Gets people's attention to come through.
Something you might think about, you've got impervious surface that you have some grandfathering on now. I'm getting off in the weeds, but I want you to think about this. If you start expanding your impervious surface, basically all your non-permeable areas, you're gonna get into some detention and water quality, and so these are some things that you might want to start thinking about more kind of in civil design. There's a lot of great methods nowadays that you can both deal with the quality and the quantity of water, and it's gotten a lot easier than just putting big underground detention ponds in, or big ponds that are actually either retention or detention next to your site. But you might want to think about some of those things. I'm not sure exactly what your before and after impervious is going to be, but if you start exceeding your after post-development exceeds your pre-development, there's going to be some expectation. Not a big deal. I mean, it's just part of development. I mean, Knox County, City of Knoxville has developed. They've adopted water quality as well, so it's not a big deal. But these are things you might want to start thinking about.
Permeable pavers is one of the things we're definitely looking at. We've already
they're
crossed
awesome.
that into looking at what the project's going to cost.
Well, and the great thing about permeable pavers, they've actually come down in price. As they've become more accepted. You got some more contractors doing it, and they've figured out a little more economies of scale to get it installed, and so it's a lot more reasonable than it used to be.
It's a great look too. When you come in,
it's an awesome look.
You spend money, you get a good look.
Yeah.
Are the gas tanks already gone?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I want to commend you for buying that property, Carlos and Doug. Yeah, period. And then if you can come up with some development that everybody can agree on here, more power to you.
Well, I think you're hearing some consensus tonight that we like the direction you're going in. And again, I'll echo what Roseanne said. I mean, it was a tough site. I mean, it was hard to try to make the numbers work and come up with a concept that is exciting and both hopefully leaves you a bottom line. And I mean, there was a lot of folks that tried to make a run at that site over the years. I tried, probably 30 others tried, and I kept thinking, oh gosh, well, how do we do this? And you guys are just doing an awesome job. And dealing with your neighbor next door, which has not always been easy. Fortunately, he's a new neighbor. Okay. They acquired that building in the last couple of years, and so I think you're hearing a lot of excitement from us. If you got some questions, this would be a good time to ask them.
We need to start making a list of the amendments we're going to have to make to our ordinances.
I think Mark's been doing. He's been making notes tonight, talking about some of these things.
I would like us working on that and understanding that, and as your concept develops, we need to understand what's going to be required of us, so that we're not, because you could see an ordinance, it has to go through the planning commission in 2 readings at the plan.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Well, we're trying to streamline this process because it could get drug out to 6 months, and that's what we really would like to.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that to you. So, and some of these things you could run concurrent. I mean, you could, so.
So have we given everybody enough feedback that?
Oh yes, that's fantastic. We appreciate it.
I guess is there anybody on the commission that doesn't like what they see? Because I think these gentlemen probably need to hear it and how to deal with it.
The only thing I'm concerned about is the appearance of this beer garden if it's predominant on your property. Okay, the honky-tonk effect.
Could be on the backside.
So I think that has to be done tastefully, so the appearance is presentable for that part of our town.
Yeah, I agree. One of the nice things about with the building designed that way, it's on the backside of it, so you really, as you drive, you just really won't see that.
You see a little bit of it.
That site is going to be the most prominent in downtown
That's our
Farragut.
goal. We want it to be fantastic. So our goal,
whatever that is, they're not going to have the beer garden's not going to be visible from street side.
Well,
either way.
We might want to look at maybe a little bit of screening on the east end of the large outdoor patio.
Yeah.
There might be some creative ways to kind of deal with that. That way, if you got traffic that are going westbound on Kingston Pike, try to keep that kind of out of sight, out of mind, and maybe address some of John's concerns.
And I think I would think of that outdoor patio not necessarily as a beer garden, as a place to take your taco that you got from indoors and eat outside. There'll obviously be a few people drink beers, but I think it'd be mostly families out there eating dinner that they come inside to get and want to eat outdoors and bring their dog with them.
Right, and that's a good point. We're not looking for it to be kind of a music venue every night, all the time. That's just once in a while, kind of thing. So you think about, just like Doug said, it's, hey, I got my tacos, I got my pizza, I got my ice cream, I'm going to go sit down on a patio.
And that caters to the Farragut market.
Yeah.
It really does.
And that's what we're smart enough about. We kind of know the families, and just like us and all of our friends. You know, so when we talk to them, they all want to come. So we know there's a demand for that. So you obviously want to invest this kind of money. You want to make sure that there's demand for
Let
it.
me put this out. When you are on North Shore, what's Don Gallo's
Yes. Yeah, I live right behind it.
Gallo's, whatever it is, has a patio that you can see from North Shore,
Yeah.
and they have a little play area where that you can play
Cornhole.
cornhole, and the kids are out there, and it's fun, and that doesn't look tacky to me at all.
3/4 of the parents don't even like the food, but it's always packed because the kids are happy there.
Yes.
And they, and it stays
That's-
packed. And
that's
that's the reason.
that's a
we're-
fun
we
space.
We literally live right the corner.
Right there.
And
It's
so
all
we
about
know-
the ambiance and the family.
Maybe that's where opaque comes in, you know?
And so that's exactly what we're looking to do
Yeah.
on the corner. Is the family
But that's what
and
brings
kids.
people in. You know what? I can't say that I love their food there, but I love that patio.
Exactly. It's fun.
because it's just got a neat vibe.
It does. It's just very family friendly and just good energy, and you just love seeing the kids running and having a good time. And so that was, and we wanted to create that on the backside and make sure we had kind of crowd so the parents wouldn't have to sit and watch them every second.
Yeah.
They could feel like they're fairly safe.
The idea that you said backside, because I don't want it to look like that corner
Yeah.
on North Shore. Really, I want it to be more,
Sophisticated.
yes, that's a
Opaque.
good word, you know. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't want to pull up and stop at the red light there at Kingston Pike and King and Campbell Station and hear just booming, loud music and, not very tasteful to me.
Yeah, it's not.
you know.
It's not at all.
It's going to look and feel like that town center concept that we want to see.
Well,
quality.
I'll throw in one more thing. I don't know if anybody was ever at the Black Horse Grill down in,
Yeah, I've been there.
and so I don't know if you've ever been out on the patio, but their patio was small, but it backed up to the house that was next door to it. And it was green. In the spring, there were azaleas blooming, and but it was lots of trees, and you didn't see anything, and nobody saw you. And that's the kind of, for me and my family, that's the kind of outdoor dining we want.
We want it to be
something-
beautiful. That's why we pull in
Yeah.
landscaping, everything just to be fantastic. You know, artificial turf, beautiful landscaping, just a place that you want to go to. That's one of the reasons we looked at the permeable pavers. He said so. It's just a really good looking parking lot with the pavers instead of just asphalt, and give it that whole feel. Just make you want to come there, hang out.
This will not be the first time we see you, so we're looking forward to you coming back with more information for us, and hope we've given you enough.
Well, we appreciate you staying
And
late.
Mark's the contact person here.
Yeah,
so.
Mark's been great.
Very helpful.
Okay, great.
All right, fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time.
Hey, Mark, I'm sure I don't have to say this, but when you do this ordinance, be sure to exclude food trucks in parking lots like the old Ingles and Kroger.
That's where we got to be.
Okay.
You know,
We've got to be intentional about this.
I'd just treat it as a restaurant, really. It's inside space.
Yeah.
Be enclosed. I mean, it's in an enclosed space.
It happens to be a mobile kitchen that's parked.
Yeah, it's basically a parked kitchen.
Okay, Mark, we have before we need to change.
15 minutes.
I bet we can
before
get both of these items done in 15 minutes.
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, discussion and public hearing on a resolution governing planning commission procedures is applied to the number of significant comments that remains on plans intended to come before the commission and how to address approval subject tos, that are not taken care of in a timely manner.
As you all know, we talked about this last month as a workshop item, and we talked about the reasons that the staff was proposing a resolution because we've had some problems with plans not being, maybe prepared as well as they should, and then projects that get approved with conditions, and then you don't really ever see that project again for months and months, potentially longer than that. So we wanted to try to propose a resolution where you all actually adopt some standards and expectations for plan submittal and what happens once plans that are approved with subject tos there's a time frame within which they need to take care of those subject tos. It creates a lot of tracking issues, and then also ordinances change, and you get a project that, if you don't have a time frame on when they take care of subject tos, then, you may have something that was approved 3 years ago, but then some really important ordinance changes occur during that time frame, and they could still argue that, they were held to the original subject to approval. So that's all we're trying to do, and through this resolution, it gives both the Planning Commission and the staff, I think, some substance that we can refer to if somebody comes before you and they're really not ready for y'all to take action, that we can always say, well, we've adopted by resolution these expectations and standards, and until you can present a project that meets those, then we're not ready to take action on it. So that's what's in Resolution 1908, and the staff recommends approval of this resolution.
Motion to approve Resolution PC 19-08.
Second. Can I ask a question, though?
Yeah,
Where is this, is our policy handed to people when they're presenting their plans, or where is this policy posted? How do we make the developers aware that this policy is out there?
Well, it will be.
Be codified.
We'll have
in the
to
municipal
figure out
code.
where would be the best place for it to be, seen, and so that people know that we have this
Should be
policy now.
attached to the application.
Yeah, I mean, we have an electronic application process now, but we should be able to add
And it
that
can
in
be
there.
emphasized at the staff developer meeting.
Well, there is a signature required on the application.
Yeah,
And
that's
there
right.
could be some language that could be added, so there's no misunderstanding. I do have one question. There's a project that this board approved a long time ago that is the apartments out at Watt Road.
Yeah.
For love them or hate them, we finally got through the site plan with that project. It has to do with the grocery store and some other things. How does this particular ordinance change affect that project? Or is that project grandfathered in? Or or maybe their subject twos have already been addressed?
No, that was one of the projects that they had quite a few subject twos, and they have not resubmitted anything to address those subject twos. So
Is this going to penalize? Is this going to make them start over from scratch?
no, I wouldn't think so. I think this is just for new
And they need to
projects
deal with
that
their
would-
subject twos.
Yes.
Yeah.
This
Our
intention was
at some point, if they can't get it going, then they're probably going to lose some of their vesting in that project. I'm hoping they can still do it, because I think that's a good project for Farragut. There's some good components to it, and I think it's good for West Farragut especially. I just want to make sure we don't penalize that project. And there may be some other projects that I hadn't even thought about yet that we've approved the full site plan, not just a concept plan.
Yeah.
That are still hanging out there.
Yeah,
I just don't want to make sure we don't unintentionally penalize somebody.
I have one just quick comment. One is, I think you did a good job of listening to what we talked about at the last meeting and incorporating this, and I think it's entirely reasonable what we have listed in here.
I have a question, Rita. Is it open for discussion?
Yeah, that's what we're doing,
Yeah.
discussion.
All right. In the third paragraph,
Where the planning commission finds that?
commission shall generally blah, blah, where the planning commission finds that a site plan, I'm wondering about whether the simply deny approval and reject the submittal. Is that two actions? Is that not?
No.
Is that not denying
action.
approval, thereby rejecting the submittal?
That's one action. You're rejecting by denying.
Yeah, so the wording, I'm just suggesting that maybe the wording should be simply deny approval, thereby rejecting submittal, the submittal. It sounds to me when you put the and in there, and the same thing, same comment I have in the next paragraph, the third line.
Simply deny approval, thereby
Thereby rejecting the submittal.
That makes it black and white. Somebody reading that, do they understand that
That's
you're
what-
getting
that's
denied
the
and you're
result.
getting rejected, but it's not 2 action items. So I'm okay with your language change,
Okay.
Roseanne.
All right. And I was reading the code, the TCA 134304 there. They use the word extend. You're talking about defer action there on the second line of that paragraph, same paragraph.
So they use the word extend?
Extend,
What, in the
yeah,
Tennessee
As
Code?
opposed to
extend
defer?
extend the
Code they
time
use,
period or some such. I don't know. I'm just thinking.
We need to be, I mean, personally, I like the word defer better. I think it's
too.
more self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But maybe we should be more consistent with the TCA.
I think what we were trying to say there is that if they waive it, then they're, agreeing to the extension. If not, and then you could defer. If not, based on, the TCA, you pretty much have to deny it
Or they're automatically approved.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
because of time.
Well,
yeah,
I'm
a lot of times
okay.
we
I
have to
mean, I
take
don't
action
feel,
on-
that's okay. I can concede on that.
In fact, we have a waiver built into
60
the
days
application where they have to accept
They have
the
to,
waiver
okay.
or not.
Okay.
And then if they don't accept it, then our recommendation to staff to you would be to, deny it as opposed to doing it.
Then, I don't want to open this can of worms, but Noah,
Yes, ma'am.
you and I went round and round the last month on the 180 days, I still feel that that's too long. I'm just making the comment.
Okay.
I can live with it if the rest of you can.
Yeah.
6 months, that's a long time to clear up some subject twos that are supposed to be minimal.
Well, I agree, but sometimes there's some things out of your control that are just hard to
Well,
do.
that was your argument, and I
Yeah.
concede. I concede. I just,
Such as financing.
Yeah.
Mark, what happens if the applicant will not waiver?
Well, if it's, it has to be acted on then by you all.
Yeah, we
If
gotta
it's not
either vote it
ready,
up or vote it down.
we'd recommend denial
If they
if it
refuse
wasn't ready.
to waive the extension, or extend, not waive the extension, but then we got to take action.
Yeah, and that rarely ever happens, but we have had to bring some things before, and they were either ready, or if they weren't ready, we had to recommend denial on it.
The reality is that the applicant knows. They know, and they really don't want to be denied.
No.
That causes other problems.
Yeah.
So it is a pretty rare occurrence.
That kind of stuff that, people don't like to see a denial. They'd
Right.
rather it be deferred.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, then, technically, when you deny, you got to reapply, and there's other things that has to go through that.
That's
so.
right.
So most time not, unless you just have somebody belligerent that
Yeah.
just wants to battle, which
So-
fortunately we've not had in a while.
So the group down at Watt Road does not fall under this, where the planning commission does choose to grant approval subject to conditions must be met in 180
Well,
days.
it's, y'all are adopting it tonight,
Tonight, so
it
that's-
predates the adoption.
Okay.
So, I would not hold
No.
projects that
Going forward,
predate
it
the
can't go back.
adoption to this. I think this is for projects moving forward. Hopefully, they'll do something one way or the other with that, and,
But you just never hear anything from.
well, there's several projects. It's not just that one. Yeah, we've got it.
So we have to make a motion to amend with that language, changing that language.
So, Mr.
So
Mayor,
I'm
you
going to make a
amend-
motion to amend
I was just going to ask the mayor whether he wanted to just amend his motion, and I'd second the amended
Okay.
motion.
Oh, there you go.
your motion.
Go ahead.
It's your motion. I can't amend your motion. You need to amend it.
Or he can withdraw it, and you can do it, Louise.
Yeah, I'll withdraw, let you do the whole motion.
All right. I'm going to move to approve, what's the number? PC-19-08 with the two amendments stated previously. Mark, does that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any utilities? And I believe we do have utilities tonight.
One that came in late, it's a pretty minor project from TDS. They're extending us about 185 feet of cable.
So moved. Subject to
Okay.
items 1 through 4.
Well, there we go. Okay.
Where is it?
That was Noah and
Station
Louise.
All those in favor?
Go home.
Tick tock, tick tock.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Should do all of the subject to fall under either
Lack of
minor or
exclusion.
major categories?
Chairman,
Is there like a minor, misdemeanor, and
Figure
felony?
Municipal
or-
Planning Commission for
yeah, we did quick on that one.
July 18th.
There's some shiny stuff